OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning, it's OTB AM. Good morning to you, wherever it is you are at this morning. Delighted to have you along with us. And Shane is here. Shane, how are you doing?
Very good morning, Adrian. How are things?
Ryan, Colm, how are you?
Lads, how are you?
Both, done very well in the fashion stakes this morning, lads. Fair play to you.
Right. Well, I was getting abused the other day for wearing something that was too skin coloured. I kind of looked like I was fading into the wall almost. You know, us pale men. Colm's actually a bit more Spaniard looking maybe than myself.
The context is that it's bacon in here, Shane.
It's
and
roasted.
Colm is just being a slave to the fashion.
We got an email there last night.
Despite the jumper that he's got on him, that is like would keep you warm in Alaska.
Toasty. We got an email there last night. Wrap up in the office this morning might be a bit cold, so I listened. Adrian never read the email.
Do you not like play the conditions then when you arrive at the stadium and it's actually not exactly as you expected? Do you not?
I kind of
tweak your attire.
I prefer to be warmer than colder.
You're going to be in here now for 20 minutes, and by the time you leave, you're going to be.
I'll be back outside there, and it'll be quite temperate. Like Jojo there's giving me the kind of side hand saying it's grand. He's wearing a polo shirt, so I should be fine. Looking forward to it.
You've got the white shirt on as well, Adrian, but I felt like we had to dress up a little bit. Like Damian Browne is in later on this morning, and he did literally row across the Atlantic. So I think, a little bit of effort for him might go along.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying that Colm's jumper was like a old sea. If you were like singing a sea shanty, it might be
a maritime vibe to Colm.
I haven't worn it since last. It's a winter jumper.
Yeah.
So it was in the back of the wardrobe there, and I read the email. And sure, didn't I run upstairs and be like, I think I have a jumper fitting off the description of this email to wear something warm. So I'm delighted.
Yeah.
I like your very formal white shirt of a Friday.
I'm delighted.
You
the
wrap
most
up once
Colm
a
Buig
week.
comment of all time. Well, I'm delighted.
I was just thinking there last night.
I've had my fun.
In preparation for this, it was like, you have the greatest PR. You come in once a week. You rack up Friday. So every time our regular viewers see you, they're prepared for the weekend.
They're all in a good mood.
And that puts enormous pressure on you.
All right, so they're not in a good mood because anything I do, it's just because it's Friday.
No, you're the facial recognition and introduction to the weekend.
Yeah, it's like the trigger.
So take it away, Adrian.
Pavlov's dog. Every time they see Adrian, they think of the weekend.
We were watching different games last night in a few different regards. I was watching the Rovers game in the main, and again, I felt like it was a couple of weeks ago for the away leg where Rovers done really well, totally, perfectly suits them. The quality of opposition with Mulder last night, that they were exactly on the same level as them. There was, they outplayed them, as the Mulder manager said at a certain point in the first half. Certainly not at their depth. And then again, in aggregate, they've lost the two games 5-0. And look, the opening goal from Mulder was an absolute outrage. It was so ridiculous. Yeah. It wasn't even close. The Mulder player was. Fofana was about 3 or 4 yards offside. And when I watched the replay, I thought, the linesman must have just been just in the wrong position catching up a play. No, he was exactly on line and really should have spotted it, and it was brutal. And I did think at half time, okay, they'll sit down and regroup, and somebody will point out, Stephen Bradley will go, or he'll have one of his lackeys head up to the referee's room and go, here's a picture of the offside. Listen, I mean, I'm just saying. And then the second half doesn't get redressed if it gets close, but no, Byrne puts the ball in the back of the Burke, I think it was, put the ball in the back of the Mulder net, and the replay showed that as one of the analysts said afterwards, his knee was offside. It was definitely an opportunity to go, that's fine, because there's no VAR. I mean, it would have ruled out the goal in the first half if there had been. Overall, very disappointing, I think, for Rovers. Stephen Bradley was talking about it afterwards, about they have a couple of games left. He was openly saying we'll target the home leg, which makes everything from resting the players last week make a bit more sense. Just very disappointing because, for the reasons that we spoke about last week, that it captured the public imagination. Huge opportunity for Rovers, big opportunity to bring in a load of money to the League of Ireland. And maybe the most disappointing thing, as I said, that they were totally on the level of Mulder last night. There's no way there's 5 goals in the difference between those two teams.
Yeah, a bit tighter last night. Last week was a farce, the team that was picked. Now, maybe it was rationalised with the fact that they scored the last minute winner against Shelburne, so would they have won that game so late if they played their best team and the lads weren't rested?
I can say that now, yeah.
It's hindsight's great, but I mean, at least they were more on a level last night. Now, they're not getting any of this lucrative prize money that we were speaking about before for a draw or for a win in the Europa League. A bit disappointing. Probably highlights how tight the title race is domestically this year. I mean, if Derry City were 10 points adrift, Rovers would have really been going for it. Not that they weren't going for it last night, but I mean, probably highlights that they have to have an eye on the other prize as well.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because they need to focus on getting to Europe next year, and that's a financial benefit as well. So there's two sides to it, but pity they couldn't pick up something last night.
The Molde boss, Erling Moe, was very complimentary of Stephen Bradley's side afterwards. Now, maybe it's easy when you've won 2-0 and 5-0 in aggregate, as you said, over the two games, but he said that Rovers were the better side in the first half, and that's what, like we were talking about ourselves, Adrian, this morning, was the first reaction to it was like, once again, Rovers played quite well. But once more, they're like no goals scored. They're the only team in the Conference League this season without a goal to their name. But they're not out of place either with the performance. So maybe, look, there's been a lot of abuse the last week about the side that Bradley played, certainly last week, and maybe the approach to it. You know, you work so hard to actually qualify for the group stage, and then it's a bit of a damn squib when you're seeing all the games happening. And then for people who are the casual fans of League of Ireland, this is kind of just adding fuel to their fire of, well, like, you know, once they get there, they can't compete anyway. But that's actually not the case. If you're watching the games, they are competitive. So maybe look at it more positively if they're to repeat the feat next season and just take the chances that they are creating. We're talking about a different story, and like, we're very much leading with Shamrock Rovers first thing in the morning, you know. But at the moment, we want to talk about them, but it's hard to do it when they're not scoring goals and they're losing games, and everyone seems a bit frustrated with the process.
Well, they looked last night, looking at them at times, like Burke Towell had taken like long pot shots that were just like they're low percentage plays that you just typically wouldn't be doing, and you wouldn't see them do it in the League of Ireland. Brian Kerr was making the point last night that they were actually a bit leggy, that they were stretched so much in the game that they wouldn't have been with the League of Ireland. Not to do with like being tired, just that they were stretched in a way within the game that they wouldn't have been within the League of Ireland, and it just meant that they were trying to pull off stuff that they typically wouldn't, and that was just a low percentage play. So look,
I thought Tallaght Stadium would play a role last night as well. I know they've a fairly good record at Tallaght Stadium for obvious reasons, but I mean, yeah, you'd wonder. And Nathan last night in the news round outing himself as a full-on Shamrock Rovers fan, which I find interesting. You know, generally speaking, I thought he might stick to the West Coast teams, maybe a Sligo Rovers, where he used to work in Galway.
His family have relocated. He's basically a Galway person now, so you know that would seem like an obvious fit. Yeah,
you'd imagine so. So a bit of a strange one. No, obviously his kids have every reason to support Shamrock Rovers when they've grown up in the area. But yeah, Nathan has really found his feet. He'll be all anti-Bows now in the next couple of years, I think. So he's going for it.
Brandon Pang on YouTube, good morning to you, Brandon, says lol Fashion Friday.
People are getting abuse now for making an effort. So what should we do? Just land in and rock in? And
no, I mean, I think in fairness to Brandon, I think he sees our point of view, Shane.
What's our point? Okay.
Well, we wear things that we don't.
Like, what?
What are you supposed to say?
Am I with you here?
Tell me what my point of view is.
No, we're not afraid to wear what we feel is right at the time, and that's why Brandon's tuning in here, Fashion Friday. Whereas you're coming in now with your white shirt, very formal.
Formal Friday.
And you're judging right, left. You're like a good midfielder spraying the passes, except instead of footballs, it's judgment.
The abuse he's just given me is that I'm like a good midfielder spraying passes. So
but it's judgment instead.
In terms of heat now, you're getting pretty.
It's always a risky one. If you spill your coffee,
you're done. You're gone. Tom won't have that.
You were watching the United match.
I was watching the United match. It was a very, very strange game in that United were completely dominant, like ultra dominant. But lads, Francis Uzoho, this Nigerian goalkeeper, 23 years of age. I mean, he's got 18 Nigeria caps. He's a bit of experience already. I was reading up on him this morning as well, and he had an absolute howler back in March where he made a bad error against Ghana and essentially cost his country their place in the World Cup. And all his Nigerian teammates kind of came to his aid and said it's not your fault. But his post-match interview even last night, like he's a massive Manchester United fan.
Right.
Was completely, but he was the first question he was asked, "You must be disappointed," and he was like, "No, I'm delighted."
What are you on about?
It was always my
Everyone's
dream.
talking about me.
Yeah. It was always my dream to play at Old Trafford, and I mean, he had an incredible game and a number of cracking saves.
Come on now. This has been totally overblown. It gets mentioned in the commentary, and then suddenly everybody else goes, this is the performance. And you were texting last night about it, and I was like, I was going to watch the highlights anyway, and the highlights were, I mean, maybe they just didn't show some stuff in the highlights, but there was a lot of saves shown in the highlights.
So many saves they couldn't show them all, Adrian.
But the thing that I would say is I agree with the volume of saves, there's no question about that, there was a lot of them. But was there any of the shots that he saved that you would have gone, like, that if he didn't get to?
Yeah,
a lot of them where I thought, if he didn't get to that, you would have gone, well, that
the
was
first
a bit
one,
of a slip.
the very first Rashford.
I didn't feel that there was any of them that were that worldly.
I would say that was amazing.
And I would say that Brian Kerr was making the point last night that he didn't have many decisions to make, which I thought was much more succinct than any way that I could have described it, as in the ball was hit at him 20 times, largely. Like there was certainly a number of the shots that he was being lauded for, that obviously the commentary, once you're in, and the commentary was like laying it on with a trowel, that like...
No, I don't.
He would have had to. Some of the many of the shots he would have had to actually dive out of the way.
Paul Scholes said he was also playing down the performance. Look, the point is, goalkeepers get so much abuse when anything wrong happens. Why can't we just let them have their day? He was the man of the match last night.
He was grand.
He had a great performance.
That's not true though.
It is true.
He didn't.
There's a lot of saves in the match. Yeah, some of them were relatively straightforward, but others were like there was the Rashford Anthony double save as well.
But that was just a matter of getting up off the ground. It was like sorry. The ultimate point I'm making here is the shocking quality of United's shot taking. That's the ultimate point here.
No.
This is not like well done because he stood his ground. And of course, you do see keepers at time like half jumping out of the way.
If Gavin Bazunu had that performance last night, that exact performance, what would you be saying?
I would like to think that I would sit here in the cold light of day.
He'd be full on. What a player!
Like
man of the match.
Bazunu saves a Ronaldo penalty. He tips of the fingers when the ball's about to go into the top corner. There was nothing like that.
Hold on now a second.
Nothing.
Hold on now. The Rashford save in the first minute. The save from Casemiro is fantastic because he had actually.
This is the one who hit the post.
Yeah, off the bar.
Yeah, but they said in the commentary that he didn't get a touch on it.
To the bar.
I don't know. Look,
he was late standing.
I'm not saying fair play to him or that he had a stinker. He had a lovely game.
Hold on.
But I just think it's been
he was a late standing,
overstated.
and I think the reason that everyone's so complimentary about it was there was actually a bit of a blurb just before the game kicked off about the fact that he was kind of playing out of nowhere and a United fan, so it was kind of all set up for him.
All right, so
and you would think all that, but you would think no, and then he ended up performing brilliantly because for the first few saves, he started very well. So I actually think it was, for me, the kind of narrative was that it was a player overperforming basically and. Saving, I would say at least 2 of those 3 were really, really good. And the others, he was in the way, but you kind of have to be in the way as well. You can find ways of not being in the way.
David De Gea had
nothing you're saying is convincing me otherwise.
Remember David De Gea had an excellent performance against Arsenal a couple of years ago and everyone was raving about it, and it wasn't a brilliant performance, but it was something similar. There was a couple of really good saves in there and the rest were kind of...
But that's different with De Gea, you're talking about a different level. So I mean, look, it's this guy's coming to the club he supported and played very well, and he just frustrated United. I'm not saying they're the best saves I've ever seen, but there was a collection of really, really good saves.
Richard Redball says Scholes said it last night, every shot was in the middle of the goal and a save he should be making. That's succinct as I could put it.
Player ratings, what are you giving him out of 10? Based on the highlights.
Whatever, 6, 7. That's fair enough. He didn't put a foot wrong. I'm not saying he had a bad game. We tend to misrepresent what people say on this show.
Do we?
Yeah. I'd say it was a 7. It was. What rating are you giving him?
I'd give him a solid 8.5.
Well, now an 8.5 is not an all-time great performance.
No, but.
So you're accepting on some level.
It's a great performance,
and that's ultimately an 8 that you're feeling generous about.
Wait, hold on now a second, right?
Give him a rating.
Let me think about this, right? If every shot that United took went in, right? United hammered. Hold on, would you let me do it, right? United hammered them then, okay? They hammered them. So he had to save every shot that was put to him. So therefore, he did his job at an exceedingly high level. So therefore, he gets an 8. Now, what I found most interesting about it was just how happy he was throughout the whole event.
He was buzzing.
He was delighted with life.
Yeah, but you're just talking about things that have nothing to do with his
even more so afterwards. He was smiling away. Yeah. He was high-fiving everyone. He was taking the congratulations. And it's his team lost.
I know.
I feel like this is going to be the greatest performance of this guy's career. Or maybe we'll see him to a Premier League team soon. We talk about him all the time. Yeah. We can get him on the show.
He may... I'm saying on the basis of last night, he could be anything. He could be amazing and he could be terrible. Who knows? And don't come back to me now when he has a great game in a few weeks' time and say, we told you about that.
Don't come back to me and prove me wrong, please.
No, but that doesn't change the narrative of last night. Super Ken says, bad finishing and good goalkeeping. And he says, in the words of Roy Keane, that's his job. I'm not necessarily saying that. But,
well, what's the great goalkeeping? I remember David Marshall for Celtic against Barcelona had a great performance. There's been a couple of big ones in the Champions League.
Schmeichel against Newcastle in 1996.
Yeah,
famous St James's Park. And again, those saves, none of those saves were made. There was one from Les Ferdinand, which was very good, but it was like, it's not that it's world-class save after world-class save, it's the consistency, and then you're getting into the heads of the opposition's attackers.
Yeah,
and
that was it.
That for me is the sign of a great ball. No, Ronaldo was smiling Riley at him in the second half last night,
that's
being
Ronaldo,
like,
that's Ronaldo giving himself a free pass.
Even Rashford got through and put the ball, just blazed it wide. I'm thinking the keeper's in these players' heads now.
And the corner was given, and nobody was.
I guarantee you, right, that those players after the game last night, none of them were going, he had a worldly. They were reflecting more on their own performance. Now, I will say John Hamill makes a very good point here. He says hit straight at him or good goalkeeping positioning.
And do the emoji face.
Eyes in. He's got the face.
Yeah. So the question.
I accept that. That is fair. But I am saying that none of those players last night, they're giving themselves a free pass if they're saying he had a all-time great performance. And neither of you were saying that. 8.5. That's grand.
It's a great performance, though. That's a great performance.
I mean,
7's good. Very good.
You want to talk about referees?
Yeah, I just read this piece by Max Rushton in the Guardian today. So it's off the back of Milan-Chelsea the other night when Tomori got sent off for a second yellow card, and it was kind of a subtle tug on the shirt. Players went mental, the Milan players, because they thought it was so subtle. And Rushton's point here is the overall abuse of referees. So like, if Tomori could have conceivably gone in 2-footed and won the ball, and the ref might have missed it and it would have been play on, but because of this subtle tug of the shirt, people go mad because there can never be a free kick. But Rushton's making the point here, and this is, I think, where it all stems from, is that the laws of football are there for everyone to see. They are freely available to read. You can get a PDF from the International Football Association Board website, so everybody can read the rules of football. His point is that players are either misunderstanding the rules of football and taking it out on the referee, or they're conveniently doing so. But either way, the men's game has this huge problem of, I find it very difficult to watch a lot of games when players are consistently laying into referees. When the decision's been made, you can see it clearly that many of them are telling refs to F off, and it's so clearly visible, right up to the referee's face. And the refs do nothing about it. Very rarely. We saw a recent example, a total outlier was Ireland Armenia, when the referee sent off 2 Armenia players for dissent back to back. And we talked about it the next day, like, that was absolutely amazing. And I was in WhatsApp groups that is fantastic, that's what should happen more. Then the cynicism came in, it's because it's Armenia players, they probably got away with it, and the ref was able to do it. And then the next discussion we had was, well, that is an outlier and it won't happen again and it won't be repeated. And a couple of weeks later, it doesn't happen again. So these players get away with murder, in my opinion, with the referees. And look, the rugby example's used and people do tune out when they say, the respect for refs in rugby, it's fantastic to see. And people are like, yeah, that's rugby, it's a different sport. But even watching Scotland-Ireland the other night was so refreshing on Tuesday night, because the vast majority of the decisions were simply accepted by both sets of players, and it made for a much better viewing experience. The refs get hung out to dry, and often is the case, as you were saying, Adrian, before, and you made the point, and it's very valid, is that the players, when they're complaining to the ref about a decision that's just been made, they're not actually talking about that decision. They have deep down accepted the fact that the decision has been made. What they're doing is trying to intimidate the referee not to repeat another call against them. Alex Ferguson needs to do it all the time. Get stuck into the referee early, put him under pressure. And the problem is that the culture is never going to change if people don't talk about it. I find it absolutely infuriating to watch, and I find even talking football generally with people, the amount of times that it goes back, the ref is terrible, the ref screwed us. The ref's only applying the rules that the ref knows and may make a mistake every so often. But it's just like the abuse is so much. It's so jarring to watch because they just accept it, and there's never a retort. And and if you're not going to do that to players, if you're not going to discipline people in general, just on a human level, people will get away with as much as they're allowed to get away with in life. You have to clamp down on people, and like. I'm looking at this image here in front of me, and it's 6 Milan players surrounding the referee, and there's no one there to help the ref. Like, the ref's just backing off.
But they're being let down by officialdom, is what the reality there. Like, because if they were to decide collectively, this is no longer good enough, they could do something about it tomorrow. Like the Armenia game. Like, there's no reason to delay any of that. They could. It doesn't need. The people talk about this great culture shift. It doesn't need any of that. If they start flinging out yellow cards like confetti,
totally
for that stuff, like where they get. As you say, like with the Armenia game, they get the yellow cards, they get the red cards. They're still walking off the pitch going, F you ref. You can see the words coming out of their mouth every weekend, and it's absolutely desperate. But I personally, there's no will to fix that.
There's no will. That's the thing. There's no will. And look, Tennis Tank makes a good point in the comments this morning. In Do What Robbie Does, only the captain can talk. And I think that's the first step to it. The other step, I've heard before, and I initially thought, no, that's not a good idea, but I'm coming around to it, is miking the ref up. So that immediately would change the behaviour of players. But for me, something needs to change. Now, look, maybe I'm in the minority here. I would say a large enough minority, but the minority nonetheless is that it really bothers me. It might not bother the next person. But I find it difficult to watch certain games when the ref is getting in the neck left and right over every single decision and nobody stopping it.
We had a game, I'm noticing the rules even getting a bit stricter at a Sunday league level. Like, we had a game a couple of weeks ago where I don't want to out him, but one of my teammates, and this is soccer, told the referee to F off. Essentially didn't agree with the decision. His argument was that he was just saying F off, generally speaking, but the referee sent him off. It was a straight red card.
Right.
I went over to the referee and asked what that was about, and he said it's a new rule. If you tell the referee to F off, you're gone. And I was like, well, fair enough.
I used to have that same experience playing football in Cork, is that it went completely the extreme one way or the other. Either the ref would clamp down on it immediately or he wouldn't, and that was it. And there were certain games where the ref is also acting as linesman. And would get the most abuse for calling offside when he can't possibly see the angle anyway.
Yeah.
And like, you're getting what, 20 quid a game, 40 quid a game. And I'm saying to myself, why are people putting themselves through this? Like, what kind of psychological welfare do they have?
Yeah, like this thing of the referees being surrounded, and there was a piece in the Irish Independent I was reading this morning. Thomas Gleeson, a Dublin GA referee, who was telling his story and talking about the physical abuse he actually underwent, and being followed to his car after an under-11s match.
And pushed.
Like, it's just, that's grim.
Whatever it was, he got 6 months.
Yeah.
One of the things that will get totally lost in the aftermath of that stuff the other night is the explanation from Vera Pauw when she came out afterwards to talk about the general culture within the team, and she was talking about, like, we have a stance that, and you never would have heard this stuff, only that it was in the context obviously of the other madness, but we don't give back chat to the referee, and we behave in a way that is consistent with having good cultures. There was more to the conversation than that, but it was the line that stood out for me particularly was, we don't give back chat to the referee. And I'm pretty sure that won't be applied 100% of the time. I'm certain that there will be times where a decision arises and people will go, but look. So I'm certain that's true. But it's great and refreshing to hear that, you know, that a management they've sat down with the players and said, what do we want to have as a culture? Because, like, all the examples that you're talking about, as much as we say that they've been let down by officialdom, which of course they are, obviously within their own group, they're not sitting down as a group to say, well, you know, when a contentious decision, I mean, you have the Ferguson example of when a contentious decision happens, get in on the ref, get in his ear.
The referee's just the messengers. Like, so back to this Rushton article there where he's talking about you can read the rules of football. The handball rule is actually still ambiguous even in writing. So that's going to cause contention immediately straight away. So nobody really seems to know the actual definitive rule other than the referees. But Max's point also is that the players also seem to be unaware of certain rules and take it out in the ref. But they are just the messenger. Like, look, on Tuesday night, as I said, I go back to it, and any women's game watching recently, it's so much better because they just accept it. And I can think of a handful example in the men's game that do the same. I remember Branislav Ivanovic, former Chelsea defender, used to be a great man for accepting a decision and walking away. It was very refreshing. N'Golo Kante's another, doesn't say a word, just walks away. I'm like, I would love to see this replicated. Like, I don't think it's very brave or smart to get stuck into a ref. I would say, like, it's fairly cowardly behaviour. It's an easy target.
Yeah.
And I think less of a player there used to be a number of Manchester United players who did it. And even when I was a young fella, I remember thinking, it doesn't feel right, like.
Referees should nearly be mic'd up in, and this is an argument Gerard's making as well for GEA, but even at Premier League level, wouldn't it be so interesting on the TV coverage to be able to hear what the referee's saying to the players? It's accountability on both sides. Yeah,
I think the yellow card one is a better option, I have to say, because I think that is the one that makes players sort of, like, obviously it'll be more high profile and a bigger fallout from the mic stuff, because particularly over the first few weeks of it, you're going to hear everything. A few good points coming in on the textures here before we leave it. Danny Mack saying these players are multimillionaire entitled is the culture. I don't know. I mean, Shane's just given an example where I presume that's not exactly the case. Zan Z says rugby also has a deciding commissioner. You don't take the pressure off the refs by placing the burden of discipline solely on them. Post-match bans for abuse. Answer is staring us in the face. 2 refs like AFL, says Dahi. Super Ken, it all starts at kids' games. It's so accepted to abuse referees. If there's no referees, there's no game. I actually don't believe that it starts with kids' games. I think if you started it at the highest level to dish out the yellow cards, you'll suddenly have, I see it at under sixes on a Saturday afternoon, where they're copying what's happening in the Premier League in terms of celebrations and stuff. They'll be looking at that going,
the one hand up for a corner kick.
I'm telling you, that's the celebration memes that were going around the other week, where there was like kids running out sort of giving it all this after scoring a goal. So look, there is more comments coming into that, and do keep them coming in over the course of the morning. And we're with you until 10 this morning. And good morning to you if you just joined us. It is 5 to 8. If you're on your commute, do drop us a text this morning or get in contact, whatever platform it is you're looking at us on. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up on the show this morning. We've Rosie Foley, who is fresh-ish from another amazing swim in the US this time to complete the Triple Crown. Former Ireland international. We'll get Rosie's view on all that very shortly. Phil Thompson is going to preview obviously the big game of the weekend, City Liverpool, and just exactly what's happening with that Liverpool team, get his thoughts on all that. Alan Quinlan will look ahead to the weekend rugby. We'll also get his thoughts on all the chat about Johnny Sexton and whether he's whinging or he's right to be as vocal and verbal, given the conversation we've just been having with the referee. And also news this morning that Eddie Jones has lost his, or is about to lose his, one of his backroom staff, his defence coach, to the NRL. So we'll get his thoughts on that and a few more bits and pieces as well. And we're very excited because Damian Browne, another man fresh from an unbelievable challenge he rode across the Atlantic in the end solo, is going to be joining us live in studio from 9 o'clock this morning. And he will be minus the beard, so that'll be coming your way. And at 9, and then another former Ireland second row, stack full of them this morning. Paul O'Connell at 9:30, who's in conversation with Aisling just yesterday. So that is all of that. Right, Rosie Foley, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
Flying it, how are you keeping?
Oh, there's no fear of me. I live in a madhouse, but other than that, I'm fine.
Congratulations, that is amazing. So to give people an idea, if they have missed this over the last week, you previously had swam the Channel at 33.5 kilometres, the Manhattan Island swim 45.9 kilometres, and now the Catalina Channel swim of 32.3 kilometres. It's the Triple Crown of open water swims, and you're just the second Irish woman to do it. Congrats, it's an amazing achievement.
Oh, listen, it's my own Triple Crown. As you know, Anthony with rugby had a Triple Crown with the Irish men's rugby team. I missed out on the women's doing so well, Fiona Coughlin and the girls. So I set about, I suppose, getting my own Triple Crown. So when I first started, I didn't really know much about Triple Crowns as in open water ones. And once I kind of got a whiff of that there was a possibility of having a Triple Crown of my own, I suppose it's like everything else. You mentioned Damien Damian Browne. So Damian Browne started his epic journey on the day that I swam around New York. So there's a few parallels there with second rows in Irish rugby for sure. So I mean, yeah. So this is something that I have, but like everything, it's a very much a team effort in our house. Like my poor long-suffering husband Pat Minogue, and my 3 kids that have to put up with it now. Oisín was 17 yesterday, so Oisín is 17, Brendy is 15, and Shifra is 12, nearly 13. So they've had to put up with a lot, and then I have fantastic backroom friends, if you like, who support me all the way. So like the likes of Fanula Walsh and Andrea Newport, like I couldn't do it without them. And God help me, my poor parents are just blue in the face from what is she at now? And like, I'm turning 50, please God, in 2 weeks' time. And I'd say they're just, is she ever going to stop and leave us in peace, really, you know?
Yeah. And it sounds like you might not, but we might come to that conversation in a little bit. In terms of the number of people, like there's only 279 people worldwide that have actually done this before. That puts the achievement in context for people. How long does it take you to swim that distance?
Listen, it was over 16 hours in that case, but it's the most beautiful swim. The water is 22, 23 degrees. You start at night, so you take a 2-hour journey on your support boat out as far as Catalina Island from the California mainland. And the stars were out the same night, so I've been really lucky with weather-wise and that. And you go out to Catalina Island, you get into the water, you have to clear the water to get to clear sand before you start. But it's a night swim, And I remember before I got off the boat to jump into the water, I saw a sea lion heading towards the shore, and I thought this is a good luck omen. Got into the water, and I just thought, my God, it was like being in the bath here in Killaloo. I just thought, Jesus, this is great. So I was really lucky that way. Lots of pods of dolphins, lots of sea lions, and I had another fantastic, as you know, the world of sport, you have great friends, and I had the most fantastic kayaker who's a really good friend of mine, Grace van der Bly, who actually holds the record for that crossing.
Right. And
a really good friend of mine who's based in the States, who's American, is Jenny Smith, and she was only fresh from doing the Marble Arch to the Arc de Triomphe, which is a run of 87 miles. She swam the English Channel in her bikini for the second time, and then cycled to Paris during what's called the Enduroman there about 6 weeks ago. So she was also my support team with my great friend Fionnuala Walsh on board as well, because this was a very last minute cancellation that I got, and I just thought the stars have aligned. We better go do this now before you're 50, get your Triple Crown done, and celebrate in style, really, I suppose, is kind of where it goes. But yeah, very lucky to get it done this year.
Fionnuala, I think, is one of the ones that was the other one has gone before you, if I'm right.
You're correct.
What's the so that's your support crew essentially as you're going around. What's the interaction with those, Rosie? Is there any point of chat? Are you allowed to have a bit of a drink? Are you allowed to have food? Because it's a long period of time.
Yeah, so all these swims are under English Channel rules, because the English Channel is the creme de la creme when it comes to open water swimming. So it's the usual, which is for us is just your normal hat, pair of goggles and swimming togs. You cannot be touched or helped in any way. You can be your water bottle is given or thrown down to you. You can't be in contact with anyone. So anything you want, then if you wanted to have, we'll say a bite of banana, or that a slice is put into a cup, you take it out of the cup while you're treading water. So you're not supported in any way. But in the case of Catalina, you have a big support boat, which was called Bottom Scratcher, which really, I just love it. I love all of it. So you have Bottom Scratcher with the Munster and Irish flags hanging off it, which always give me huge inspiration for any of my swims. The one that I use for Munster is to the brave and the faithful, nothing is impossible. So I suppose that's kind of a mantra for me when I'm swimming. And the other person that I had that was with me for the whole time was Grace van der Bly, and she would have my drinks on her kayak. So instead of having to go near to the boat for it to be thrown down, she'd actually pass it over to me, throw it over to me at a better level. So, and yes, I could interact. You can hear what people are saying. You can hear, I just don't like... When I'm doing a swim, I do it for myself. My family know what I'm doing, and afterwards, then we support Orla's Wild Ways, which is the three charities, two of which Anthony supported when he was with us. So very few people knew what I was doing. So it would be messages from home, and Oisin says, or Pat says, or Brendy would be on the phone, or Schiefer would be saying, "How's Mammy doing?" That kind of thing. So you get that type of stuff, but not a lot of it, feeding plan kind of goes from roughly every half an hour or thereabouts. So you just look forward to it. And I suppose that's where rugby and really sets you up really well. You go from set play to set play. So in swimming, in my head, I'm kind of doing something similar. I'm going from one feed to the next feed, enjoying what's around. The stars were out, the warm water. I could hear pods of dolphins around me. I was very aware of that, and I suppose the word I would think of is it's a privilege really to be able to enjoy and aim for all these lovely goals that you can go for, and I'm so lucky to be supported in my home life and with the people around me to allow me to do that. So I do feel very lucky and very privileged. Yeah.
It's funny, Rosie, as Adrian mentions, only 279 people have done it. It strikes me that over 600 people have been to space. So there's twice as many astronauts as there are people that have done this, which puts it into context a bit. But which psychologically, in terms of start, middle and end of a 16-hour swim, what's the most difficult part? Because obviously at the start your body is freshest, but you have the furthest distance to go. So how do you manage that, and maybe which segment is the most difficult?
It's like again, it's the whole sport, and sport getting you ready for all parts of your life. Obviously, you're really, really nervous in the few days, the couple of days, 24 hours really beforehand. That the start is you have to be at the dock at 6:30 tomorrow evening in San Pedro in California, and that's coming. So it's just like you're getting ready for any other kind of game. It's you get your calves on. I wear a red, funnily enough, a red swimming togs with the Munster and Irish emblem on it and my name on it with Foley 8 on the back of it, to remember Anthony, because he used to have great crack when we were swimming. But like I would think of things like that. I would think of matches and I suppose part of it, and I suppose the nerve-wracking bit, I suppose, is as you're about to start, that I'm not getting out till I finish, because that's, I suppose, my mindset in has always been. But I suppose there are times, usually about halfway-ish, and I never ask the time. I don't ever want to know how far we've gone or how much we have left, because when you're in water, the land can seem closer to you than it actually is. That was something that, a very wise person said to me before I ever went about open water swimming and swimming the channel, and that don't look to the landmass, because it is that. So I suppose it's kind of going from segment to segment in my own mind, and I think of people, and I think of lists, and I think of all sorts of things when it gets tough. I'm not getting out on. I would get out if obviously you were told by the boat captain that it was unsafe, or that you were actually a risk to yourself. But other than that, it's really trying to galvanise your head. And anyone that I spoke to, and at times I dip in and out of actually Damien when he was rowing across, and I could see, and I could, I suppose, empathise with a lot of what he was doing. Obviously, it's a very long time he was rowing as well, but in your own mind, you have those what they call kind of dark moments of the soul in one sense, but because I suppose we were always taught that you live in the present, and my parents, I have to thank for that, because when we were growing up, they never ever let you assume it was drummed into you, never assumed you were going to be playing the next day, and that really meant for us that you did your best for whatever you were doing at that time, and you never assumed, but you never gave anybody an in to your jersey either. So you always try to do your best. So I suppose it goes back for years and years and years that is really galvanized into your head, and it does certainly come from my parents. Yeah.
You mentioned the charities that you've been involved as well with Orla's Charities, with the Midwestern Cancer Foundation, with Cry and Carry, which give screening and bereavement counselling for families at risk of SADS. And we'll send out the details of those from our social media accounts as well, so people can jump on at idonate.ie, I think, to get involved in it. And you've mentioned Anthony a couple of times, and it's his 6-year anniversary, I think, on Sunday, Rosie. Yeah, and it struck me actually, even over the last week, listening to you on various bits and pieces. It's brilliant. Every time you hear his name been reintroduced into the national conversation, it's a great chance for everybody to remember what a man he was. At home, I presume you still talk about him at home and at the home place, or is it hard, or how do you manage that?
Oh no, he's very much around us all the time, we'll say. So his son Tony and Dan, they're actually the same ages as my two older boys, so Oisín and Brendy. Life is funny like that. They're inside in St. Munchin's, and Anthony loves St. Munchin's. Anthony's repeated his leaving cert in St. Munchin's to go on that famous tour to New Zealand with Declan Kidney and the boys. And actually that group of Anthony's schoolboy friends from that schoolboy tour are very much in our lives now. So rugby and that support is very much still around us. Anthony's very much with us. My son Oisín was lucky enough to get called up to the under-18 rugby schools squad last week. So the last person in our family that did that was Anthony. So he's very much there. obviously they play with St. Munchin's. They also play here with Smith O'Brien's. They play their hurling here with Smith O'Brien's still. And again, it's our community. It's sporting community. So, I mean, Anthony's very much, around us. And like I would say stuff to him all the time in my head, like,
Yeah.
There's still that healthy, I suppose, not rivalry, but like he's never far from us, particularly, obviously this time of year, but I mean, like he's with us every day. The lads head off to school, they're on the pitches that Anthony played in, they're meeting Anthony's friends, and then people who played with Anthony, their kids are now playing against our guys like the Sheehans in Cork, I mean, they've played against each other. They're all great friends. They all connect really well. You go up to Clemboyd, up in Belfast and that, and Gareth Davis and their boys were all playing in different squads for Ulster over the summer. We all met up down in Musgrave Park because all the games were on. So that he's very much with us. He's very much around us, which is lovely to see. Yeah, and it's lovely to have.
We've Rosie had a couple of these conversations on the show recently about people who have been recently bereaved, and we had the teammates of Dylan Quirk, the young Tipperary hurler, on the show yesterday, and the father of Ogie Duffy on the show quite recently as well. But I think that's such an important thing you've touched on there, and it's. I guess it's talking about the person as well and not being afraid to talk about the person, because look, as Ger mentioned yesterday, Irish people are great at funerals and wakes, but it's what comes afterwards and the years that follow afterwards that maybe need more attention.
Well, definitely, and I'm not saying that any of it is easy, and as you've mentioned, lots of people will tell you there's really good days and there's bad days, and as it comes up to his anniversary and that, so yesterday Oisín, as I said to you, was 17. The last time we actually saw Anthony before he passed away in Paris was with Oisín, with us here in our family home, and he was taking them off to hurling training. So after we had the cake, and he always tried to make the cake no matter where he was. It was something that we had as a family. The birthday, you always try to make the birthday, regardless of whose birthday it was, by the way. And he took them off to hurling training above in Smith O'Brien's, and then brought them back that evening, brought them back home, and actually he headed then to Declan Kidney's wife Anna had passed in Cork. Himself and Dad had headed down to that, and that was actually the last time that I saw Anthony live. So yesterday it would have been, certainly he'd have been very much in my mind, being the last time that I would have seen him.
Yeah, how will you mark it on Sunday, Rosie? There's been such an unbelievable amount of public showing of affection for him over the years with the many high-profile things that have happened, and even the Jack Carty presentation was it last year on the 5-year anniversary. How will you mark it as a family on Sunday? Well,
my husband's Pat, his mother actually is dead 20 years coming the end of October. So there's a mass for Eileen Minogue in Scariff, and at 11 on here in Killaloo. Regardless of the day of the week it is, we go to mass. We go to mass and we think of Anthony, and are very thankful that that we had such good memories and good times with him. And yes, there's no doubt, like, we really, really miss him from our lives for family occasions, and that it's also my grandmother Jane's anniversary on Sunday. So I suppose in my head, I kind of think he's with Granny Jane, who I was very close to when I was growing up. So I suppose we try and comfort ourselves in that, but it's like everything, life will go on. I mean, I think Dan, Anthony's younger son, has a rugby match with Shannon and that, so it's very much, I suppose we think of him and we go on, and the reason we do that is that sport meant so much to him, and it does to us. So I suppose it's just the way we go on, but it's a tough old time.
Of course
really.
It is. Of course it is. And a lot of things coming full circle, as you mentioned there as well, particularly in the rugby space, and we'll be keeping an eye out on that. You can be certain over the next couple of years as well. All Ireland winner with Clare, 39 caps for Ireland, 2 Rugby World Cups, the Triple Crown of swimming. You mentioned about the landmark birthday upcoming. Is that it? Are you done? Is that, you going to give your parents a bit of peace now, or what's the story?
I've promised all my kids. Oh, well, I don't know if I'm done. There's definitely I have a few friends down in Baltimore. There's lovely Fastnet is down there. There's a lovely swim down there that I've been dying to to do for years. So Steve Redmond and Noel Brown, you know, I've had them beat, I suppose, for the last few years. But local, I think, you know, and around, there's plenty of lovely places to swim here. I swim an awful lot with Tralee Bay swimmers down in beautiful Feenet. We've a place down there in Banna that we spend an awful lot of time down in. So I've great friends down there. And, you know, it's some of the roughest times, you know, I've found real solace in open water swimming and the community around that as well, and you're kind of free. Your mind, as I've looked into it a good bit, it's like you have your mind is like a blue mind. It's like, I suppose, you're free from everything in one sense. You can really relax. It's kind of, people will talk about wellness and, you know, stillness and that's where I find mine. And for me personally, it's all about swimming and, you know, open water and just being around nature in that way. I absolutely adore it. So I'm really lucky to have great friends out in 2 Mile Gate with the swimming women out in 2 Mile Gate. And when I go down to Feenet, down to Tralee Bay Swimming Club, I mean, great buddies down there as well. And, you know, some of them, you know, we know each other's first names and we chip away, and it's fantastic from that. You know, they just know me as a swimmer, or they used to know me as a swimmer, and they still do. Lots of them, that's all they know me as, Rosie, who comes down from Killaloo and swims. And like, look,
lovely messages coming in. Michael Collins says Catalina beat swimming down the 2 Mile Gate that you've just mentioned. Well done, Rosie. Incredible achievement. Up the banner. And Peter English says beats the long nights in the works. Well done, Rosie. All the best. So lots of lovely messages coming in. It's been great spending a bit of time in your company to hear about the detail of it, to reflect a little bit on Anthony's life as well. And as I said, it's all for Orla's charities that she's put together, the Midwestern Cancer Foundation, Cry and Carry, and we'll put out the details of those on our social media account. Fair play, Rosie. Thanks a million.
Thanks so much, boys. Thanks a million.
Good on you. Cheers, Rosie Foley.
Thank
there. Incredible achievement, really, in so many ways. I know you're a master of the open water, Shane, but that's
our 250 metre swim during the Tri-Thai was
you could walk if you went up the left
kind
leg.
of puts it into context a little bit, doesn't it? What she's after doing. But yeah, that's proper endurance, what she's achieved there. That's
incredible.
Oh, unbelievable.
8:15 Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, we're back after this very short break. The legendary former Liverpool defender Phil Thompson ahead of the big Manchester City game at Anfield this Sunday.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, a slight tangent, the crappy quiz, and you had to be there.
5 goals in 20 minutes. It's just, you can't do that. It's the Premier League. You can't do that.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
16 minutes past 8 on this morning's OTB AM on this Friday morning. The small matter of Liverpool against Manchester City this coming Sunday, as Adrian mentioned before the break. We'll have live commentary of the game as well right here on Off the Ball. You get it in the OTB Sports app as well. Delighted to be joined this morning by the former Liverpool defender, 3-time European Cup winner Phil Thompson. Morning, Tomo.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Keeping well. You've got the small matter of City, as I said, this Sunday. A certain Norwegian striker that's a reasonable enough goal scorer. How do you go about stopping him? Is there a way to stop him, Tomo, for Liverpool this weekend?
Well, I can't play this weekend, so that's taken out of the equation. No, he's been phenomenal, hasn't he? You just look at the guys, and you know, anybody who likes a little sort of bet, which I'm not encouraging. He must be there with everybody's, so because he's just so predictable, and that's what he's brought to the game. He's been absolutely astonishing, and not playing the other night was nothing about, I don't think, him being tired or anything like that. I just think Pep seen it as an ideal opportunity to give him a rest and keep him very, very sharp for the weekend. But he certainly brought something wonderful to the Premier League, frighten the pants off every defender, that is, but he's terrific.
Like, if you're a Liverpool defender heading into the game this weekend, is there an element of fear almost coming up against him, or do you kind of revel in those opportunities to play the best in the world?
I think this one will be revel in it. I think the players will really be looking forward to it. Van Dijk and Big Ibu Kanate, you know, they're two big strong lads. So you look at the side of them, and I'm in awe of them. When I'm doing pitch side for the TV at Anfield, and you see these two boys and they warm up together, my goodness, you know, they're so big and powerful. It's absolutely terrific. So I think they'll be looking forward to it. I think it gives it a little bit of a different context, this game, because with Liverpool and Man City would normally ride high at the top of the league. But this time City are up there with Arsenal and we're languishing in 10th. So it throws up a little bit different. And there is not sort of, I don't think Liverpool feared anybody, but it's going to add something different to this game at Anfield.
You mentioned about Van Dijk, obviously, so it's a good chance to talk a little about him because, like, he hasn't been the player this season that he has been in previous seasons, and look at the result during the week maybe gives everybody a bit of a lift. But I did notice when the Arfield goal went in that Van Dijk particularly was flinging his arms in the air, pulling at his jersey, looking at his teammates, sort of body language that we're not used to looking at from Liverpool players.
Yeah, but I think that it's not only Big Virgil, it's everybody. You look. And just before I come on, I was thinking, who can I say who's been a positive this season? And there's not been too many. Thiago, but he's had an injury, but Thiago's been really good. Bobby Firmino's been good. There's not too many more where you can say have hit anywhere near the best. So Virgil's in sort of, dare I say, bad company there, where there's a lot around them who are not playing to the best. Having said that, Alisson's been exceptional in goal. He's had to be because we look so vulnerable at the moment. Particularly, you looked at that second half against Arsenal was absolutely awful. But the result against Rangers, particularly the second half, was a lot better.
Is the Van Dijk stuff a function of the greater product not working as well as it is, or is there something off with him from what you're seeing?
No, I just think it's a real lack of confidence all round. You know, there's been trends. We see Matip having a struggle, Virgil's having a struggle, Robbo's been injured at left back, so that normal function has not really been there. So come the weekend, Big Ibu's come in, Joe Gomez will probably play at right back. So circumstances are probably helping the side, bringing a lot of strength back in the side. Joe a little bit more defensive, but Virgil certainly has not been the player that he has been, and I just think it's confidence really in what you do, which has been normal. When you start thinking about it, you think it too in depth. I don't think you do things naturally.
You mentioned Roberto Firmino there, Tomo, and it was 9 goals, I think, the season before last. It was 11 goals last season. He's already on 8 so far this year, so he's having an excellent season, undoubtedly. He's always kind of been, even when it was Salah and Mane beside him, he was always kind of the unsung component of that front three. Contract up at the end of the season. Is it a no-brainer now that he gets that contract given his form?
Yeah, I would like to think so. Listen, everybody asks who's your favourite player in this side. People think that because I'm a defender, Van Dijk is the... Bobby Firmino's always been my favourite player for what he brings to the side, the intelligence, the high press, when to do it, when not to do it. This fella I think he's so important to the side. And I think it gives Jurgen Klopp a bit of a conundrum for the weekend. How do you fit Bobby Firmino in? And I think he's got to play Darwin Núñez, who scored in the last couple of games, up front. But then Bobby can't play on the left, can't play on the right. So does he go with 4-2-3-1, which he has done in the last few games? Then you can see Bobby as a number 10, and he deserves to be in with the way he's played. But will Jurgen go to sort of 4-3-3 and match up a little bit with Manchester City?
Yeah, and that formation point is an interesting one because he wasn't afraid to change a couple of weeks ago, Jurgen Klopp, and when things weren't going well, decided that he needed to adapt and overcome and change formation a little bit. And quite noticeable during the week as well, Tom, against Rangers, like Harvey Elliott had a brilliant game and scored his first Champions League goal. He kind of struggling in that 4-3-3, but when he was, I guess deployed a little bit wider in the 4-4-2, it seemed to suit him perfectly.
Yeah, did he was absolutely fantastic. He was great. Him and Fabio Carvalho, the two great lads who get in between the lines and they turn quickly and they go forward quickly, which we don't have too many like them, but they're relatively young and inexperienced. And Harvey had been our best player in about the first 5 games, something like that. And then we played Harvey and Fabio Carvalho in the derby, and you went, wow. And the both of them struggled. And then after that, Harvey played against Napoli away, which is a similar type of atmosphere, and struggled. I think it might be a bit much for him. But if you're good enough, you can perform in any situation, and particularly with it being at Anfield. But you're right, Harvey played in a different formation rather than a 4-3-3 and excelled, and so did Carvalho. So he has got a sort of decision to make in what he goes with. Because, as you say, we've had a tried and trusted 4-3-3 for the last, I don't know how many years. But he's seen, as he said, since he's looked at something and it looked a bit broken, and he had to look for a new system, and this seems to be the system. It'll take a little bit before it actually starts working. So it'll be a big, brave call, I think, again, to go with 4-2-3-1 against the City side.
And when you're talking formations there, it's almost like Harvey Elliott's defensive capabilities weren't too good in different games, and I'm not trying to make excuses for Trent Alexander-Arnold, but you certainly need people tracking back and helping you out a little bit. And
guys, you're saying Harvey, Mo, the start up, Mo has not helped a lot with Trent, and he's far more experienced than Harvey. So you've got to admit it's been a team thing rather than an individual thing. It's these lads have not given each other enough support. Well, Harvey has been fantastic. Mo, when he came on, certainly didn't celebrate as much as I would like him to for his hat trick. But you have to understand that he needed a rest. It was showing that, and I think he'll be better for it against Man City.
What's in that, Tomo, and the celebrations? We were kind of talking about it before the show this morning, and I guess each goal he increasingly celebrated a little bit more. But still, it was strange to see someone so muted scoring a Champions League goal, especially the opener.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's like any striker. And I've sort of played with them, I've managed them. When they don't play, certainly when I was assistant manager and manager at the time with Liverpool with Gerard Houllier, we had Michael Owen. I'm taking Michael Owen off. Oh my goodness. You brought him off, you think you chopped his arm off or something. He was but you were doing it for the good of the team. Now Mo not playing was for the good of the team because he needed a rest, and the Man City game's so important coming up. And with respect to Rangers, we sort of 2-0 could have been far more at Anfield. We knew it was going to be a little bit easier. So we had to rest quite a few players, and Mo was one of them. And I think more players should understand what constitutes as making a decision for the team rather than the individual.
Is Michael Owen knocking at your door afterwards saying, what's going on? No,
I'll tell you what, I pulled him in on the Monday morning, and it was at Blackburn. Excuse me, guys. And we had a game in midweek. We were 3-1 up, and there was about 15 minutes to go. He'd had his injuries. And so I brought him off, and there's a big screen there, and he started nodding his head, and everybody's looking at it like that. And I thought it was a disrespect to the lad who was coming on as sub. It was a disrespect for the decision. And I explained that, but he said, Phil, you know what I'm like. I want to play every minute. I feel like I can score every time. And I said, yes, Michael. I said, but I'm looking at the wider picture. And I said, I knew with your injuries, I said, I had to protect you for the midweek game. He still didn't accept it, like.
Yeah, and did that conversation in itself almost impact your thinking again down the track, or?
No, not at all. I'd have done the same thing the following week if we had another midweek game. Yeah. Michael was so important, and you do these things for the sake. Team, boys, always comes first rather than the individual.
Yeah, and managers have to fight their corner as well. And
absolutely,
Jurgen Klopp certainly did that in the press conference during the week as well. Klopp versus Didi Hamann wasn't exactly the argument I was expecting, but here we are. He was asked in the press conference, for people who hadn't heard. I guess someone quoted Didi Hamann saying that Liverpool need a spark after the defeat against Arsenal last weekend, and Klopp's response: "Oh, great! He is a fantastic source, well respected everywhere." Just a touch of sarcasm to Klopp's response. What did you make of the whole thing?
Yeah, it was, and I think it's just been the way we've been playing and the questions that you do get asked when things are not going right. And it was a bit touchy, the reply from him, but it was wonderful, wasn't it? The win against Rangers certainly helped give us a spark. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, shouldn't I? No, it has been one of those things. I think it has been a difficult time. Jurgen's not had it for quite a while. So I did think it was, probably look back at it and go, probably it was a little bit harsh on Didi there.
Yeah, because I suppose Klopp's other comment was that, being a former player doesn't give you the right to say what you want. And he said, especially when you have no idea.
Being a former assistant manager, though, I mean, that's a different.
Well, hopefully that's a different thing. And it is. Listen, Didi was a fantastic player. Played in many a huge game, Champions League finals. So, and he's a sort of he does a lot of media work over there now in Germany. So maybe maybe he said a couple of other things, because he'll probably watch a lot of German television. Didi's on a lot in his home nation. So maybe he's rattled Jürgen a little bit.
At this stage, Tom, of the season, Liverpool kind of lying mid-table, performance is not the best. Where do you think their ceiling is this season? Where can they finish?
Yeah, I do think we're finishing in the top 4. We are having one of those blips, as we did the other year when we lost 6 on the run at home. People tend to forget that, and we certainly come out of that well enough. And I think this team will do that at this early stage. That extra game that we need to catch up on the other teams is a huge thing at the moment, and that's hanging over us. I think you take another 3 points at this early stage, things look a lot brighter. Everything closes up a little bit more. I think when everything gets settled and it's like that, you'll see Liverpool up there. I've no worries about Liverpool being in the top 4. Will there be a title race involved? Hopefully, but it doesn't look that way at the moment.
Finally, Tomo, score prediction for Sunday?
I'm going to both results last year was Desmond. I'm going again for this game. I'm going for 2-2.
All right. Well, listen, then enjoy the game, Tomo. Thanks as always.
Cheers, lads. My pleasure. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.
Phil Thompson there, former Liverpool player, 3-time European Cup winner. He's
are you having that? A Desmond?
Yeah. Do you know what?
No chance. There's not.
It could be a good game, though. It could be a decent game, at Anfield especially.
City could end up winning that 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, the way they're playing. It kind of takes the sheen off every game City are playing in at the minute, doesn't it?
I mean, the Rangers game couldn't come at a better time for Liverpool in hindsight, and they go in with a bit of confidence, but that confidence is gone. Exit stage left if after 3 minutes Haaland's after banging one in the top corner.
I know, could kind of ruin the whole thing, you'd imagine. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Right time for the sports pages.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be. No, I'm not.
Yes.
No.
Right, 8:30, OTB AM, and good morning to you, wherever it is you are at. We're delighted to have you with us. Loads of comments coming in this morning, so do keep them coming in, and we'll keep reading them out for you. Right, the newspaper is Irish Daily Mail. Now, it's written in the paper, right? There's a story here in the paper, and there's a whole story here about UEFA launch investigation, so don't shoot the messenger, right? It comes up for conversation. That's what happens, and it's you haven't seen the last of it yet, I'm sure. UEFA's probe football chiefs investigate Irish player chanting, writes Mark Gallagher here. Controversy over Irish players singing up the Ra in the dressing room on Tuesday night rumbles on as UEFA yesterday announced that they're investigating potential inappropriate behaviour following the playoff victory over Scotland. I've nothing particularly new to add to the conversation. Everything's been kind of said before. The only thing that I do find kind of interesting, I have to say, is the fact that it has allowed us as a nation to open up a conversation about whether it's... I've observed the conversation over the last few days, and it's been about the song. The conversation is not really about the song. It's about the use of those words.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about the song. It's inoffensive. It's middle of the road. Whatever you're having yourself, it's about Celtic. Blah 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 blah. It's not about the song. It's about the words. That specific piece of the words. And I, for one, welcome a conversation about whether that's appropriate now or not. I mean, you can have an opinion about that one way or the other, but it's been good, I think, as a conversation in 2022 to sense check ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one thing that I think the Wolf Tones said themselves, that they say, you know, those words they're kind of referring, and as you'll hear the other lyrics in the song, graffiti on the wall, up the Ra, so they're talking about graffiti saying these words.
I know,
doesn't excuse it.
No, that's purely that. Look, whatever. The Wolf Tones are going to excuse that stuff.
Well, of course,
but that's them
one.
going. That's like the journalist asking the question, going, Didi Hamann said he's thinking about it's like somebody else. I'm not having that.
But it's a fair point starting the conversation then, because like even in our kitchen at home, it started a conversation. Yeah. I'd imagine across the country people are starting to have conversations around it. More power to it. I don't think the players expected this sort of backlash. No. You could see the look in their eyes when they were being interviewed the day after the match, and they're like, what? Like, this is supposed to be a great day. Yeah. So you kind of feel sorry for the girls, but Vera Pauw's handled it very diligently and well. So I mean, hopefully we can just forget about this farcical discussion.
Well, the thing is, so I think we should continue the conversation. Leave where it came from behind us, because they've been hauled over the coals. That's all done and dusted. We don't need to talk about the players anymore. We can just talk about the conversation and whether it's appropriate, because you made the point, and it was a bit of a scales from your eyes moment for me when I heard it the other day, where you were like, this gets played in clubs and in pubs and it's sung in dressing rooms, and I wasn't aware of that. And so I do think that as a country it's all right to have a conversation about that aspect of it. Are those words appropriate? What's the context of them? Absolutely, people don't get the age profile probably of a lot of that group would not have any understanding about what was going on in the 70s and 80s and 90s. So that's all fair enough. But I do think, like, the people who are saying we're not allowed to talk about it, brigade, I mean, that's a worrying road to go down for me.
It was just funny how the conversation went. Within a couple of hours, from a lot of people against the team to all of a sudden the line of questioning to the players completely transformed the opinions of a lot of people back to the players.
I saw it developing a couple of hours after the game. There was a huge amount of retweets on the clip that somebody had taken from the social media account that went out, and I thought, oh, here we go.
Something's going to happen here.
By the way, Rory Keane writes in the mail as well, Wasps crisis could free up prop for Munster. Their financial difficulties, we'll talk to Quinny about shortly, could mean that the Springbok tight head Vincent Koch would go to Munster. Now, the circumstances of it are awful. Like, the fallout, further fallout from the awful situation around English rugby could well send Wasps into the deep doo-doo. But Munster are, and this is what's going to happen, of course, Munster are in bad need of strengthening up their front row particularly. So that would be not great the way it's come about, but a positive outcome for them. The Irish Independent Euro dream fades for Rovers. Reflections on the game at Tala last night. UEFA to investigate dressing room chants, and referee abuse has severe consequences, says Dublin referee Thomas Gleeson, that Shane mentioned a little bit earlier on. Nick of time, says the Irish Daily Star this morning. McTominay sinks Cypriot minnows in dying moments.
The thing about that goal, I hadn't realised this, that is the first Manchester United injury time winner in Europe since.
Let me have a think about this one now. Was it Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in 1999?
It was.
I was also watching Virgin Media last night and
picked it up.
Admiring Tommy Martin's research.
I enjoyed the comment. Just Martin O'Sullivan just wondering, can Shane ever say anything negative about Man U? Always ultra defensive when somebody comments about a player performance. He thinks everything they do is good. Martin, I don't. I've gone through enough pain and torture as a United fan over the last couple of years. I've said enough negative things about Harry Maguire and other managerial decisions as well. My point was to defend the goalkeeper last night, and he was not a Manchester United player. So I'm not afraid.
He's a Manchester United fan, so he sort of comes within the wheelhouse anyway.
Yeah, but not at all, Martin.
Zanzi said, how can a song be inoffensive but the words in the song be offensive? That's a disconnect. I mean, if you feel that to be a disconnect, that's up to you. All the rest of the song, grand. That one little bit, totally odd.
Yeah,
that's my view.
There's a tweet in as well. We've got passed in Carla Lockhart MP. She's a DUP Member of Parliament for Upper Bann. She's tweeted, on the 21st of November 1974, 21 people were murdered by 2 IRA bombs in Birmingham. 4 players of Birmingham City women also represent the Republic of Ireland, whose ladies team were involved in vile sectarian singing at the end of their match with Scotland. Will Birmingham City FC investigate? This is the point we've got to now, where people are literally calling for... It's gone so far that it's remarkably too far. Like asking for clubs to investigate their Irish players.
Look at the source of that tweet and the party particularly. I don't think we need to pay too much attention to it. But there is an awkwardness for a lot of the players who were involved in that video last night, who are in big high profile English clubs, having to go back and go, what was all that about? And you have to explain it, and I'm sure life will move on. The Irish Daily Star, nick of time as I mentioned after that 1-0 win last night. Larry's a free thinker. Larry McCarthy says the GA could look at awarding a 21-yard free or a penalty against coaches who verbally abuse referees, says Carl O'Kane. That will be, it really taps into the conversation we're having earlier on. It feels like a big departure that I could never see happening in a million years.
Yeah, and the GA especially is
certainly cut it out.
100%.
Is it such a scourge? Is it the biggest scourge?
Look, there's a number of scourges that referees have to deal with. The thing about the last few weeks is we've had these conversations because of everything that's happened in GA clubs across the country, that there seems to be a high level of abuse, or maybe it's just that people are taking note, or referees are deciding enough is enough. But these types of conversations are exactly what we need. So yeah, fair play to the media, I guess, for covering it as well in the papers.
The fair play to the media. There's things you don't hear often enough. The Times London edition. The big story here is that Eddie Jones been dealt a World Cup blows. It's been worded by Alex Lowe here. England set to lose another key figure with the defence coach heading to Australia. This is the news that Manley are swooping, I think is the vernacular, for Anthony Seibold, the England defence coach, and it's obviously just less than a year out from the World Cup. So what happens with that?
I always feel sad for Eddie Jones when something goes wrong for him. It's tough for him, you know. He's a likeable guy.
As much as you've only positive things to say about Man United, Shane, you've only ever negative things
about Eddie Jones.
Eddie. I mean, you're not alone in that regard. But Rovers' hopes of progress end as goal drought continues. Paul Butner at Tallaght Stadium last night. Lisa Fallon with an interesting think piece here. We have the chance to build on a real legacy with this team, and of course she does touch on that, and some really lovely stuff in there, including some of the reflections on George Hamilton's commentary. Now it's O'Sullivan, and there's the run of Barrett, and Barrett giving herself a chance here. Amber Barrett, and she points out the synergy with the fact that it was George Hamilton calling. She says in brackets, the nation held its breath. We already knew what to do. A Donegal man had us in a similar moment in 1990. I thought it was a nice line there.
Yeah, nice and circular.
So that's the papers, and that's where we leave it on those for the minute. We've plenty still to come, and 20 minutes time we're going to be joined in studio by the man who rode mostly single-handedly from Manhattan to Galway, and he's going to be joining us in studio at 9 o'clock. So if you have any questions for Damien Brown, we're really excited to have him in, and we're looking forward to that. But as I said earlier on, it really is all about the former Ireland second rows in the show this morning. Our pack, let's say former Ireland pack players in the show this morning, with Paul O'Connell as well coming up a little bit later on. But OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Up next, Alan Quinlan is with us live, and first of all, Joe yesterday talking to Brian O'Driscoll about Johnny Sexton's brilliance.
You do kind of keep a closer eye on Sexton given his age after any kind of layoff, and you don't want a player that age to go off a cliff. I mean, I think he's still climbing potentially.
I honestly, the mind boggles at times. He really is. He just sees it so well, and people give out to me for waxing lyric about him again, but I don't care. He's just one of the best at picking that pass at the line, leaving it late, taking the shot, and throwing the pass. And we saw it multiple times. Even when they didn't score, Jimmy O'Brien, when he butchered the 2-on-1, like that was really magnificent to suck in both Werner Koch and the outside defender, having reached run that short line because he held it so long. So many other 10s, particularly of his age, play play a little bit deeper, play a little bit self-preservation, not him. He's right on the line, and he's now finding a happy medium. He doesn't encourage the hits, but at least he throws the pass. He doesn't accelerate into them. He throws the pass and then goes with the collision, so it's taking some of the impact away. But he does feel as though he's getting better, and I have to say I'd say that about Dan Biggar as well. I think Dan Biggar has become a better player in his 30s as well, where again he's not about self-preservation. He's happy to take it on the line, throw those long passes right on the line, be brave. And again, they kind of seem very similar in personality, but also I think in their growth in the last few years.
Do all the great 10 see it as well as Sexton sees it? Is that a common thing, or they have different strengths?
No. I think he's at the very high end. I think Farrell sees it well. I think Sexton, this isn't just bias, I do think he sees it as well as anyone I've come across. He mightn't be the same athlete as some of the other 10s, mightn't have the same wheels, but his ability to actually see and read play, I think, is nearly unparalleled in what I've come across. Yeah. I've seen, obviously, I've never played with Dan Carter. I've watched him, and he's a special player, and he was able to do some magical things, but he also had phenomenal platforms. So I think obviously from a decision-making point of view, I think he's very high-end as well, but I don't think there's too many others that have the ability to take it as aggressively and pick one of three options like he has. I really don't. And that isn't just a bias, a friend or an ex-colleague bias. I genuinely don't see it, and I've wanted to see it in other people, coming through in Ireland, and the problems that they're not even close.
Full chat with Brian and Joe up on our YouTube channel. Quinny, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
You can look at this two ways. Brian O'Driscoll, Johnny Sexton is like 37 and near the end of his career, and aren't we all in the doo-doo very shortly? Or, as Brian O'Driscoll says, he's playing just as well as he's ever done. His vision is unbelievable. And we have him for another World Cup, and fingers crossed he stays fit, and we could end up having the best out half at the World Cup.
Yeah, look, it's a pretty strong endorsement, and you'd have to agree with a lot of it. I think he's obviously incredibly driven, and he's got a resurgence in his career. I think a lot of the Irish players in general, I think, were struggling in 2019 with the World Cup, and the whole thing just felt a little bit flat. And when you put that much pressure on yourself, and you've got that much kind of drive and determination, and that's your temperament, where you're a little bit, you show that frustration sometimes. I kind of worried for him around that period, and I think most people did, because he was kind of into his 30s, and he was 33 or 4 at that stage. That maybe there's a real need now to change here, but we've had a number of years, Adrian, haven't we, where we've all the provincial coaches and all the Irish coaches, and they've tried to close that gap. I think there was a period of Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton for a number of years that we always spoke about the gap between the two of them. They were on 2 Lions tours together. It was 13 and 17. Murray was there in South Africa as well. Warren Gatland has admitted that he made a mistake in not bringing Johnny Sexton to South Africa. So they've been at the top of their game, and he has been at the top of his game for a very, very long time. So that dip, which was not an individual dip, but it was a team dip, and it was worrying and concerning. But when you have, and Johnny will be the first to admit this, he's playing behind incredibly intelligent, good rugby players who are on the same page, and I think that's always been maybe a frustration for him, particularly when he went to France, that other people don't get on the same page. His vision in the game is what impresses me. He's always scanning, always looking. So, it's brilliant at the moment, and I think he's. I was at the Sharks game last week in the RDS, and you think it's early season stuff, and just do the basics, ship on the ball, kick well. But he's driving the team, and he's driving himself to look for opportunities all the time. So, I don't know how he personally feels. Has he got a resurgence given, like I was there in New Zealand up close, and I interviewed him before the first test. And there's a natural feeling here that you think this is a pretty daunting task. There's a lot of good Irish teams have been there before. How will this work out, away from home? And I just felt, he's such a strong character, and that kind of rubs off on players around him. And I just felt that he believed that they had a great chance in New Zealand, and if they played to their potential, it wasn't a case of hitting hope stuff. If they execute and do what they do well. But they become a strong, cohesive unit, Ireland, particularly after that rebuild since the World Cup in 19, where there was a lot of fragility there and there was a lot of vulnerability, and opposition teams sensed that. It doesn't guarantee that they're going to go right to the World Cup and do brilliant. Sport is kind of cruel sometimes like that, Shane.
Just on that, on Sexton, the Sexton temperament, and there's been myself and Adrian before you came in, we're talking a little bit about referee abuse and talking to referees and that sort of thing. Somewhat discussion has been made around the way Johnny Sexton spoke to Craig Evans last weekend against the Sharks. What's your take on that? Because you're probably right in what he did, in that he's the captain, he can speak to referees, but I guess it was the tone of it that people had an issue with. But what was your take on it?
I think and he's had a few issues over the years. He knows himself, and he's not stupid. I think even after the game, he'll probably know that he's kind of pushing it a little bit here. I would have had those frustrations when I was playing. If I was captain of the team, maybe it's probably why I wasn't captain of teams, particularly in Munster. I captained them once, and twice actually. Declan Kidney said to me in Belfast one time, I don't think there was anyone else to do the job, and he kind of looked around and said, well, look, what do you think? And I said, well, we both kind of said this is risky business here because you're actually giving me a license to go at the referee and communicate with him. So it's a tough job, and like he's so driven and he has that temperament to challenge everything, coaches, players around him, and then you're a captain of a team and you've kind of that license.
But the point being, he has a license. A lot of the stuff I saw last week, look at my view, it was like the people giving out about the whinging. Like, what is he expected to do? It's like I got an avenue to go to talk to the referee, to raise concerns. Like, why would he not do that? He'd be in dereliction of his duty if he's not.
You know
what?
If I was on the team and I had the frustration, which I did have sometimes over certain decisions, I would love to have a captain like that who would go up and put the pressure on.
Queries. I saw Johnny Holland doing some analysis of the decisions during the week.
He just needs to be careful because
tone was it?
Tone a little bit, and I think if you go up into the international stuff, and sometimes you'll get the referees, you know, and I know this goes on with referees. They obviously talk to each other. They watch the games and they say, "Well, I'm not having Johnny Sexton in my ear all day now, so." Before the match, they'd come in and say, look, I'm telling you now, Johnny, there's a way of doing this because it's gone out and everyone's watching this game and don't make my job any harder and all that kind of stuff. So you'll get some of that. And he's had a few issues with that over the years with some referees. Peter O'Mahony's had it. He's very confrontational as well. It's getting the balance of that right, that it's in a way...
You think he's over the top?
No, I don't think he's over the top. I think he just has to be careful with the tone. I think putting the pressure on and asking the questions, I think that I've no issues with that. He's quite entitled to do that. He just has to be a little bit different where it's not over. See, I want, as I said, if I'm a player, I want my captain putting that pressure on. But if you turn the referee a little bit and he says, well, Johnny Sexton's asked me 6 questions now, like, you know, like Johnny, you don't have to ask me the 6th of them. I can't change my mind. Say it to me at a different time. But it's poor on the referee's part. If
I look at maybe I'm overstating it, but I definitely feel as if you're entitled to have a line. If the referee isn't able to have an adult conversation to say, you know, like, here's my thought process around this.
Absolutely, that's the tone. And I've always said it when I had issues where I would have complained about penalties or I'm moving the hands and stuff. At that particular moment, there's a lot going on in the referee's head. He's just made a decision. He's been looking at a breakdown. There's probably numerous offences he can pick. He could pick one. It's like having an argument with someone when it's heated. You just want to make sure that you keep it at a level it doesn't frustrate someone.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times over the years in some of the international games where we've heard Wayne Barnes like continuously saying, Johnny, stop, or whatever. So you just got to be careful. I think all the questions were legitimate last week. There was one where Luke McGrath made the break and Johnny Sexton put him away. He got a heavy tackle. There was a breakdown. Werner Koch, the winger, the Sharks winger, gets back and he poaches the ball. And Johnny then is making the point that one of the Sharks players didn't roll away to prevent him from cleaning him out. You know, sometimes there's ones there that, you know, you can make the point rather than saying it should have been different. Just say, look, I couldn't clean the player up. So look, like I say, I'm not critical of this. I just think he needs to be careful.
I thought you'd love it. I thought it'd be one man.
No, because come here. That's exactly what and I remember one great incident when I started playing for Munster when Mick Galway was captain, and I think we played Ulster and Interpro down in Limerick, and there was a number of things going on in the game early on, and there was a fair bit of niggle, and I was kind of like, I think Galway was trying to hold me back a little bit and keep me in some way control. And I remember he went up to the referee and said, you need to sort this out now or we'll sort it out.
Right.
And I remember thinking, even though it was a very strong statement, it was a message to the referee that this is getting out of hand now and I'm giving you a break to this point. And
that wouldn't wash now. That would be he'd be put to the
say that nowadays. But look, I love his drive.
Yeah, if he's got an Ireland shirt on him, Quinny, I do think, like, I saw some of the interaction. Some of it was coming from South Africa. That stuff that you were talking about, whinging from South Africa, from a rugby writer who's since locked his account, so nobody can give him any guff. But that's fine. But I do think that, like, if he's got an Ireland shirt on him, the whole country's going, "Good man, Johnny."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one for the Van Rensburg where he had the 2 tackles and the sending off, absolutely, you got to be strong and dominant there, where there was 2 actions of foul play from the player, and it's fine the player being very remorseful afterwards, but like you're thinking, he's just hit the first one was a red card alone, and then he's over on the wing and he's like, another tackle.
Yeah.
So, you know, he has to be really strong there as a captain to say that this is not good enough. I'm not accepting this as a captain. You know, now in fairness, Craig Evans, he sent the player off, and I think he's a very good referee. He's a very good referee, and he should have said something to Johnny if there's an issue with it, and I don't know if there is a major issue with it. He just needs to. I think the tone and the find a loads of interaction, and there is times where you need to put that pressure on, where it is kind of, people can hear it as well, and it does put pressure on the referee.
He drops out of the squad for the Connacht game tonight, 7:35 Sports Ground. The Leinster team doesn't look any the weaker without him, I have to say. But I did want to ask about one of the other players that drops out, Jason Jenkins. I know he was injury prone last season. Have Munster made an unbelievable error getting rid of him?
Well, it could do,
or letting him go, however it's come about. Why did they let him go?
I think it's down to budgets, but it's also down to, you know, trying to get Thomas Ahern through there and get more game time. RG Snyman is back, so if they get everyone fit and available, if RG Snyman is playing for Munster at the start of the season,
maybe nobody's asking.
Everyone's probably saying.
But the thing is now he looks so good for Leinster. He's fit.
Listen,
and he's.
Adrian, we all knew that was going to happen, didn't we?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even the player himself has spoken about his frustration that he didn't get a chance to kind of play enough with Munster. I think Munster have been incredibly unlucky with some of the signings over the years, and going right back to when you think Christian Cullen came, you know, certain players getting long-term injuries, and it's the worst possible scenario when you're a team that needs that overseas player to really kind of make a difference. When you're bringing through younger players, you're trying to change personnel and improve as a team. If Jason Jenkins is out for Leinster for a couple of weeks...
I know, we're having a different conversation.
You know, but even if he's injured for Leinster now till after Christmas, they're not going to be usually suffer from that. But look, it's there's, you know, Thomas Ahern was brilliant in the emerging tour, so that is the hope that Snyman comes back. Thomas Ahern is there. There's Finian Wycherley, Tyke Byrne, Jean Klein. You suddenly have 5 or 6 second rows, but you don't have... You know, Jason Jenkins is quite unique, and he'll be very strong for Leinster this year.
What about that? So Furlong in, Doris, Ryan, Cohen and Van der Flyer all into the pack. Ross Burns at 10. Connacht has made a bunch of changes as well, but that Leinster pack, it's hard to get beyond, even though it's in Galway, thinking that Leinster are going to win this tonight in the strength of that.
Yeah, but Connacht, I think it's really important, and I think that game last week was vital for Connacht as well. Obviously, we spoke a lot about how it was vital for Munster for some of the same reasons, but I think for Connacht, you know, they've got Scarlets at home next week. It's going to be difficult tonight, even though there's changes and it's not as strong as Leinster could go. They played them 4 times last year, didn't they? The closest they went was in the round 16 game at home. They're well capable of it. I think they'll have a great crowd there again tonight. They'll have that energy, that fire. But they can't forget where they were for the first three games, Connacht, in the discipline, the mistakes, the turnovers, all that kind of stuff, the errors they made. So I think for them, it's about them focusing on themselves tonight. Sometimes you can get caught up with looking at a Leinster side and thinking there's a couple of players out here and there's a couple of players not playing. I think that's the real intrigue for me tonight, how Andy Friend's team respond. They've gone to it as 6 forwards on the bench again. I think their pack was really good last week. Gavin Thornbury, who you think is the size and the physical specimen that you want to step up with an Irish side, has had a bad injury last year. He's been a bit stop-start. Has he the ability to really kind of stake a claim now and get real leadership in his game and physicality? Well, it's a great test tonight, when you think that, that pack, that Leinster pack. I think the backs, there's obviously a lot of change, but, the back row of Conan, Van der Flyer, Doris, James Ryan, Ross Maloney's been playing brilliant for him. Tyke Furlong coming back. Dan Sheehan is just like a Duracell bunny that never stops going. So it's a challenge. I thought Dave Heffernan was brilliant last week. Someone I'd love to see him step up. I think he has that ability to start having a presence with himself. Finlay Beelan played really well, and I think, you know, obviously Peter Dooley and Josh Murphy, you know, they're playing against their old team tonight. Will that bring a bit of spark in them? And I think Jack Carty last week, you know, there was some criticism, particularly with the kicks. First game back, it's difficult, uncharacteristic misses from him. So for Connacht tonight, they've got to build a little bit of pressure, try and manage the game and the tempo of the game. Sometimes it's very difficult to stop Leinster, and they've started like a steam train this year with their results and their performances. But last week, I think the Sharks exposed a few. You know, if you hold on to the ball for long periods against teams who are usually very dominant against you, well, you can create some opportunities. And Connacht are an ambitious side, but I think they need, you know, they need to be careful now, because psychologically, getting up for that game last week, the challenge is, can they get that same emotional pitch this week? Because the reality here is this Leinster group can put 20, 30 points on anyone if they click. And they'll have guys in that team who were really determined to be in Leo Cullen's side going forward. So it's an intriguing one.
Can I just ask you a last one from me, Quinny, on a lot's been made this week of the Irish women's team, and congratulations to them getting the World Cup, but there's been a bit of fallout from the dressing room videos. And look, Kenny Cunningham was on the show during the week in the evening, and he was kind of referencing when they qualified for the World Cup in 2002 that, you know, there was no cameras in the dressing room, and it kind of has brought up this idea of I guess, the discussion around dressing room culture. And look, I'm not going to ask you what type of songs you lads would have sang in dressing rooms over the years, but it certainly brought up an interesting discussion on what should and shouldn't be revealed about the inner workings of a dressing room, I guess.
There should be no cameras in dressing rooms. That's your private space, and I always felt that, you know, and I know the TV providers, and I work for a few, and I do commentary, and if I'm up in the commentary box in New Zealand for Sky and I'm looking down and I can see into the dressing room, you know, the coaches at halftime, I like that. Or if I'm with Virgin Media and doing it for Six Nations, you see. But I always had a problem with that camera sitting in the corner, and that's from a TV point of view, so I would throw a towel over it or something like that.
Vera Pauw did say it wasn't about, I thought it was a credible line, she said it wasn't about whether it was shot or videoed or not, it was the fact that it happened.
Yeah, that's fine, but come here, did you think the Munster team never sang Sean South from Gary Owen back in the day? Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you don't even think of the significance or how that can offend somebody else. This thing was played out, it was the Celtic song, it's you know, of course it has to be addressed, but it was a minor kind of judgment really here. And I think now if they were full, if it was the men's senior team and, you know, they're fully paid professionals and they're all on decent money and playing, you know, they'd get more flack for it. So there needs to be a bit of a break here. But, you know, there's always a danger in the dressing room. It's the same now for players going out and about. You know, there's camera phones everywhere, people record it. If two players actually have an argument in a pub who are on the same team, which is no big deal sometimes, or a debate, there'll be someone there with a camera, and suddenly that'll be big breakup of such and such a team. So, the inner workings of the dressing room needs to stay there. But, part of me goes, who the hell put this up online?
It went up by one of the players, did an Instagram live of the celebrations.
Yeah, you see, it's bad management there. You know, going back to Vera Pauw, it shouldn't have happened. Well, my thing, it shouldn't have been going out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's risky business. And regardless whether it was shot or not.
How many times will that song? It's sang every week in Parkhead.
No, that's
60,000 people.
In my view, but there we go. The song I couldn't give two hoots about, the lyrics, those specific lyrics.
Was there the same furore made when Declan Rice was quoted saying up the Ra?
Well, nobody knew about him, and it was underage thing, and like people have referenced it a bit over the last few weeks. You're saying there's a hypocrisy
recently. No, but I think, yeah, of course. I'm not saying it's right, but it would frustrate me if we were singing a song and in a dressing room and someone is streaming it live. You know what I mean? I think that stuff should.
I think everybody's learned a lesson on that front. Anyway, at least probably won't happen again.
Keep your phones away there in the dressing room for sure.
Thanks, million.
Cheers.
Enjoy the games over the weekend. Alan Quinlan in studio as always there on a Friday morning. It's 9:03. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of today. A happy quiz. In fact, I think it is going to be the crappy quiz from here on out. So that's coming your way at 10:30.
Could I say something before you go?
You can, yeah.
What Damian Browne did was phenomenal.
Incredible, isn't it?
Phenomenal.
Would you even played against each other a fair bit?
Yeah, we played against each other a few times. I owe him a few digs, actually.
Do you? Well, you can see him on the way out there. And
he was always trying to clip me, but
the training he's been doing over the last few months, I wouldn't be trying to give him any digs.
I wouldn't want to be in the production box right now when the swap over happens here, by the way.
It's a phenomenal achievement, I think, and he's a great fellow, what he's done. And it kind of sends out a great... It's not for everyone to be at sea for that long in that sort of... but it sends out a great message about.
You were interested in one aspect in particular, Quinny, weren't you?
Well, I know he has to go to the loo somewhere, but what kind of? I want you to ask him about that, what he does and how he does it and all that kind of stuff.
We scrap everything else we plan to talk about. That's half an hour of Jack's chat. No, it is incredible, and he'll be in studio in just a couple of moments' time. 11:30, the football kickoff are going to be live. It'll be Ger, Phil, and David Connolly today. Ronnie Delaney on OTB Gold from 1. Galway, the subject of Mount Rushmore from 3, and Brian Dean is the Team 33 legend from 4 o'clock today. Catherine Switzer's interview from a couple of years ago at 6 today. So that's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio. You can follow OTB across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best and latest in sports content. And we're going to be back after these. It's Damian Browne, and we can't wait. Stay tuned.
What sort of on-pitch influence does Mbappe hold with the team from your understanding and from what you've seen? Like, is there an acceptance around the club, even with the giants of the game such as Messi and Neymar being there, that Mbappe is still the main man?
Well, that's a bit of a problem because in a way Messi and Neymar have been producing more than Mbappe has done since the beginning of the season, certainly for PSG, Neymar in particular, but Messi has been terrific at times. And it seems that there is a breakdown, shall we say, of communication between those two and Kylian Mbappe. It's been remarked upon, for example, by analysts, statisticians, when they look at the number of goal chance creating passes that one was doing to the other, that it seems to be very much a two-way traffic between Messi and Neymar and Messi. And then Mbappe is not really part of a triangle, which is what Galtier would have expected and would have hoped for, and which is the way the reason he's deployed his team as he has, as a kind of 3-4-3, is precisely to find a way to have those three together and combining together. And to be honest, it was quite promising. But in this setup, Mbappe is not the main man. And quite clearly, there is an ambition to be the main man. So you've got a zone of friction here, which, as long as the club and the team win, it's not too much of a problem. But when you add to that what we've learned over the last couple of days, and we realize, there have been problems in the background that perhaps we were not aware of, and also those promises which were made to him in the summer to convince him to stay at PSG, I think many people at the time thought that was a lot of, media fluff. Well, maybe it was not. And it's now hitting home. And it's hitting home as well 4 weeks before the beginning of the World Cup, which is not exactly great timing for the French team, which has already got all these problems. And, too many to mention, to be honest. We would need the whole evening to mention the problems that the French team has at the moment. And this explains that. And again, we are in a situation where every time with PSG, when we think they finally found a balance, and we thought that with Carlo Ancelotti, and we thought that with Laurent Blanc, and we thought that with Mauricio Pochettino up to a point, we felt that with Thomas Tuchel. Every time we think they've got there, they manage, if you excuse the expression, it's 21-26, they manage to screw it up.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Barrett for Ireland, into the area, toe push it, goal! What a moment!
We're going to a World Cup. It's what dreams are made of. I hope someone's got the champagne on.
You know, I did believe we could do it.
After the game, I said, I didn't know what I've just done. I don't know what we've just done.
History is made by the Republic of Ireland. They are going to the World Cup Finals.
For all the best reaction to the girls in green qualifying for the World Cup, subscribe to the OTB Football podcast stream now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Coming up on 9:10, you're watching OTB AM, and we are absolutely delighted and very excited to say that Damian Browne has joined us in studio. Good morning to you, Damien.
Good morning, Adrian.
How are you keeping?
I'm great.
The beard is gone, is the main thing. It's the first time a lot of people will have been aware that there's a man behind the beard.
Been cleaned up a little bit, beard gone, haircut, and feeling great, feeling fresh, you know, apart from a few kind of physical things that'll be around for a while, overuse stuff. Yeah.
Do you get attached to the beard, or are you like, I'd like it off now and I feel a restorative aspect of actually it being off, or how do you feel about it?
No, I wanted it off immediately.
Did you?
Yeah, but we have a documentary in progress, and they wanted to do interviews and some shots and that sort of. So I said, lads, you got 10 days, and then it's coming off. So I was very very happy to see it go. It's. I was finding bits of food in it there some days, which was grand on the ocean, like. But, you know,
happy days.
Yeah, exactly. A little afternoon snack, but no, I was happy to see it on the floor of the bathroom.
There's loads to get to. We've about a half an hour to chat, and it's never going to do the full thing justice. The podcast is out there, and highly recommend that people listen back to it. And I've been following it all the way through. As it says, it's New York to Galway. It's 5,000 kilometres, and it's unsupported. And that's the nutshell, I suppose, of the row. What have the last 10 days been like for you since you've been back and readjusting almost?
The first 36 hours, didn't know right from wrong, up from down. I was a bit of a whirlwind, you know. I think it would have been that way anyway, but the way things ended on the Monday night, Tuesday morning kind of accentuated that fact, you know. But then since then it's just been a kind of slow wean back into, I suppose, everyday life and routine, and I felt pretty good, surprisingly, because I was a little bit concerned about that. Getting back into society becomes so insular, and your thoughts become quite selfish. You know, everything is about yourself, like on the boat, you know, and constantly kind of monitoring yourself. So I could see that, you know, I was aware of that, and I was like, geez, when you get back, you know, you're a dad, you're a partner in a relationship, you know, you can't be just thinking about yourself. So I was worried about that, but it hasn't been as kind of bad as, or hasn't been as affecting me as I expected it would, you know. Yeah.
How has that reacclimatisation been versus the other expeditions that you've done? Has it been harder to get back into it? I mean, I know you say you've been nicely surprised by the lack of selfishness almost in some regards, but how different has it been from the others? The big difference, I suppose, was that first 36 hours. Like normally, when I last did an ocean row, so 63 days, and I ended up in Antigua, I just felt like I slotted back in straight away to my family were there and that, you know, so just to been, I suppose, a functioning human in society. Whereas this time I just couldn't connect with things. Like I couldn't connect with emotions. Like, you know, people were asking me, how you feeling that first 36 hours? I was like, I don't know how I'm feeling. I'm just here, like I'm here, you know. So that was unusual. I never had that before, and obviously the attention in that period as well was intense, you know. So you're trying to give everyone a little bit of your time, because I'm very grateful and appreciative of anyone who, you know, I suppose was touched by the story and came to let me know that. But it can be a bit overwhelming as well, right? You're getting, you know, like my partner Roselle was getting kind of elbowed out of the way, like on the docks in Galway. People wanted to get at you, so you know it wasn't not a normal everyday thing, and just trying to kind of I suppose navigate that was a little bit unusual.
The symbolism nearly of the Manhattan skyline, Damien, kind of disappearing behind you, and like obviously Gussie was on the boat as well, Fergus was on the boat at that point as well. Like, did that in any way heighten how big a task it was going to be? Because you're thinking then, Jesus, Galway, if we took a flight to go away from here, it would be fairly arduous, you know. So did that kind of put things into context for you when you saw the skyline slowly disappear in the rearview mirror?
A little bit, like so the skyline was one thing, and also the harbour itself, navigating that, like it's like this car park for giant cargo ships, you know. So it wasn't as if we could just kind of switch off. We, you know, had to navigate this, you know, I presume it's one of the busiest harbours in the world, right? It's New York and Newark and New Jersey all in one. So at one point we were leaving, and there was one of those big Danish Maersk, I think they're called, the Danish shipping company. And you know, I was kind of Gussie was rowing, I was kind of guiding them, and I was like, hang on a second, no, I don't know what this guy's doing, like, you know, talking about this 300-meter cargo ship. And all of a sudden the engines cranked up, and like normally there was a bit of radio communication between us and the other ships, and we tried to hail them, didn't hear anything. And literally, if we had kept going, like, this thing just, I don't know if he didn't see us, I probably didn't, like, and he just, like, right in our line, about 50 metres 75 metres in front of us, like, so, you know. This is the things you kind of had to deal with. So that was a time where we had to be hyper alert, you know, to what's happening, because there's a lot that can go wrong there. Once we were clear of that and kind of the last ships, and I'm talking that took about a day and a half to get through all of that, you know, we kind of could relax a little bit, you know, because you're in a grand expanse then.
What was it? I followed the pod all the way through, and it kind of felt like, even though obviously ultimately it was just yourself, and before that for the 13 days with yourself and Fergus, it felt like there was a cast of characters almost, like between Cushing and McCree, the weather, the water, the various elements, the para anchor. It just felt like this cast of characters that every day you were getting a bit of an update on. You know, there was a real humanisation of non-human things almost in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially with Cushing and McCree, because I mean, without her, right, I don't get across. Like, it's kind of your, like, valiant steed, nearly, to a certain extent.
It feels like you feel an emotional attachment to the boat.
You do, yeah, because she guided me through such adversity, such crap, like with the weather, you know, like the storms and everything, and she took such a beating. So you become, like, she becomes a kind of like like you said, a human character nearly, and you become very grateful for her resilience and her propensity to take a battering and to keep going, you know. So she was, and that's the way I talked about her on the podcast, us, and she was like she took Gussie's place as the kind of second in command as we trucked along.
There is that. We mentioned Castaway earlier, and I've professed my love for Castaway as a movie plenty of times in the show. But and there were physical resemblances as well with the beard with Tom Hanks. But there is something on that in the inanimate objects, and even with listening to the podcast, I think wasn't there one episode, not to compare it to Wilson the volleyball drifting off into the distance, but a spoon went overboard. I was thinking to myself, I was like, Jesus, this is a disaster, the spoon's gone. It's just a spoon at the end of the day, but people got so invested and involved in your experience that little moments like that just became huge things.
Yeah. It was like, kind of from start to finish, it was like the boat was been stripped of things, you know, through capsizes and just through the challenges and the conditions we were going through. Thankfully, there was always some sort of solution. You know, you try and at least foresee what can happen and bring like spares. But that spoon was like the fourth spoon. We as a group had lost. I think Gussie had something that happened, a couple of Gussies, but it was a very that meant, you know, like I had to start drinking the food, you know, so I had to just which had its challenges as well, because then I had to make a little bit more water, which means I have to have more power. But at that last 6-7 weeks, it was like nearly total cloud cover, so I wasn't getting much power from the solar through the sun, you know. So my battery started to diminish, so much so that, like, kind of getting into Galway Bay, I was on like 20% battery power, which, you know, is very concerning, you know, because they can just discharge, and then I can't make water, I don't have any comms, don't have GPS. So like there's all sorts of things that you kind of have to be aware of and trying to manage, you know. So a little spoon like that can have a grand effect on the bigger thing, you know. Yeah.
What we chatted a little bit before we came on air about like the busyness of the last 10 days, and did you get a chance to sit down with Fergus and have a chat with him? Or yeah, we sat down a couple of days ago. Now it was a little bit faux
kind of because it was part of the documentary, right? And the conversation was led a little bit there. But first and foremost, when I saw him on the dock in Galway, like, I didn't know, like, I had a lot of anger and resentment towards him at times when things got really tough, like when I was blown back time and time again, facing headwinds. Because if he was there, that, you know, the boat would have never really gone backwards, only in very, very big conditions. So it kind of ground me down a little bit. I was fine for a few weeks. The first few weeks, it didn't bother me, but when, like, it got really, really tough, that's just where my emotions went, you know, and he became the kind of projection of them, you know, as an entity. But when I got through the islands in the Aran Islands, through Inishmaan and Inisheer, and I felt like that was always the, I suppose, picture that I felt. I always felt Galway Bay was safe. Obviously, you know, the reality was a bit different. But so I had this, like, that meant that I had this, I felt like I'd kind of accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and I had this kind of wash of forgiveness, like this huge, like, you know, I was very aware of it, you know, that, like, I wasn't angry with him anymore. It didn't really matter. It didn't serve me in any way to have any sort of negative emotion towards him. So when I saw him on the dock, it was, you know, it was, even though there was still an unknown how I'd react, I was kind of very happy and content to see that. I was delighted to see him, and he looked great. And yeah, so I was kind of nearly waiting to see how he'd react when in his presence, you know. And then the reaction was very positive, so that was great.
Anger is a big emotion.
Yeah. Well, I had some big emotions out there. Yeah, because the extremes of it, you know. And the fact that I had no real outlets, you know, so it just built and built and built.
Because it felt like, listening to the pod for the first couple of weeks, there was a tension there between you, almost, even over that period of time, where he was clearly struggling with the workload, and you were just hungry for miles. Yeah. Is that fair enough? Very much so. Yeah. We had a massive blowout in New York just before we were about to leave, and that was all to do with the pressure, the unknowns. You know, we'd been running around New York for 16, 17 days, no real like space to relax, you know. So I think it just built and built and built, and probably left a little bit of a hangover. But you know, just you know, I didn't find that first 2 weeks particularly hard, and he did, you know. And I was pushing him like crazy, pushing first, because I knew the importance of getting away from New York, and that there was make and break. And he wasn't really, like, he was doing the work, like, he's a really good soldier like that, he'll do the work, but he was outside of that, he was really kind of struggling with his own kind of frustrations, you know, and that was kind of having a little bit of effect on me, even though I was trying not to let it affect me. So I think that just built the tension, you know, in the relationship. But I'm happy to say once I kind of completed what I wanted to complete, it was all good. Yeah, and like, in some ways, almost I remember we chatted to you a couple of times before you went, and it was never designed. I remember asking you at one point, like, what happens if only something happens or whatever, and you were like, not even counting. I'm sure it was in your thoughts somewhere, but you weren't countenancing the idea that it was anything but a two-man effort. But in some ways, almost, given that aspect of it, and as I said, you wouldn't have designed it that way, but like, that couldn't have continued for whatever it would have been at that point, 90 days or whatever. Like, in some ways, while you never would have designed it that way, maybe that was for the best.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of the situation. Maybe it was for the best, you know, because, as you like, what would have happened, I don't know, but it wouldn't have been good, you know, if that had continued. Some sort of volcano was kind of rumbling, and it was going to blow up, like, so. Now, saying that though, I did see him come round a little bit, like, because he was really struggling day 8, day 9, day 10. I think you could see it in his eyes, like, he was fearful, he was scared, he had the realization this was, like, out of his probably capacities, unfortunately. And I don't know if he had some sort of acceptance around that or what, but like, kind of day 11, we got in the water at one point, and there was a few things you could see him kind of release a little bit of his own frustrations, but then physically he just broke down on day 12, and there was obviously there was no question he had to come off the boat. So the reality is that probably was the best thing that could happen, unfortunately.
What the workload that you had to do then in his absence that you've mentioned in terms of the mental aspect of it, physically, were you like, how much extra did you have to do physically because he wasn't there? Was that would you have done roughly the same thing anyway, or was this an additional?
Roughly the same time. I actually had to dial off a little bit myself even, so we were running 12 hours a day each, you know.
Yeah.
And I had this kind of 5-day period post him leaving where that's what the demands I kind of placed on myself, but it was too much, and that was really difficult to accept, I have to say, because of my belief in my own capacities. But I was in this real state of frustration. It was hard conditions post him leaving, but yeah, that frustration was building, and I could see myself like it just wasn't sustainable, you know. So I had to dial back. So I dialed back to 10 hours to start, and then I went to 10.5, and I built it up to where by the end of the expedition I was back to 12 hours and more, depending on the day. But yeah, it was the acceptance around that took 5 or 6 days, and it was tough to accept it. Yeah,
it almost reminds. It's like Apollo 11 when Armstrong and Aldrin go down to the moon, and Michael Collins is left by himself then to kind of circle the moon and be alone in his own thoughts. Like that isolation, was it heightened massively when Fergus left? Was there a complete change in your dynamic mentally?
Yeah, it's a total different dynamic, right? So I think when you're in the presence of anyone, unless you're some sort of psychopath, you have to be affected by them and their emotions and what they're doing. And especially me, I had all the responsibility, you know. I was leading that, so I was also watching him and what he's doing and trying to. He can be like, I mean, I'm not bashing the guy here. It's just he can be a bit lazy mentally, like, and especially when you're under such stress, you know. So I kind of have to keep an eye on him, you know. So it's very hard for me to concentrate on my own stuff, even though it's vital, like, you know, because any movement or bad movement on that boat and you could be kicked off, or any mistake you make. So you have to be, you know, very tuned into how you're moving around the boat and how you're behaving. So when he had left, then it was basically a case of kind of even though I'm very comfortable in my own company, clearly. So I was able to kind of switch into a much more enjoyable and a much more kind of habituated way of thinking after that.
It was really interesting to follow on the pod, like the highs and the lows, right? Because there were sort of real kind of extremes, and you're exactly like you've said, they're sort of analysing everything because it's like you're in your own head and that's it. Is that the way you are normally anyway, or is that just like Shane says, it's heightened out there, or is that you when you're walking down the street kind of weighing things up?
Well, I mean, less so in a survival state like this, you know, what's a threat, which is like it is on, you know, you're like watching everything because it can compromise the thing you're trying to achieve. So but I do have I like to think I'm quite present, and I do pay attention, you know, in everyday life to everything that's happening around me. But, you know, I wasn't walking down Grafton Street there going, what's a threat here?
Yeah, that's right. Ron Thomas opened up, hang on.
Yeah, on it like a shot, like.
And the one of the quotes that I saw read there, he said it's nice to be alive, and it was hard to get a sense of what was big on the pod. Like, you know, you get capsized and I'm like, whoa, geez, that's huge. Is it all over? And you were like, I mean, it was big, but it was like, it's all manageable. Was there a point where you felt, when you say it's nice to be alive, was there a point where you felt I might not be getting out of this?
Oh, day 24, I always come back to that storm. I was like, I think it was just downgraded from a tropical storm coming off, coming from the Caribbean up the east coast of America. And I put out the power anchor, ended up capsizing 3 times while on power anchor. And that's not meant to happen. Like, that's unusual. And I had to be told that. Like, I was like, is this, I've never, you know, because I used power anchor a few times up to in the previous row and in this row, and I was like, I didn't think that happened. I was asking the guy who did my land support and weather routing, Chris was his name, and he was like, no, that's highly unusual. I was like, I thought so, yeah. So, but that was like about 19 or 20 hours, I can't remember exactly, that storm as it passed through, and I capsized 3 times in the first 5 or 6 hours of that. And then that next 14 hours were the longest hours of my life, whatever, 13, 14, 15 hours, whatever it was, because you're just sitting in this cabin that's like airtight and sealed, and like it's getting boomed around and flushed around by the waves, and you're just in a state of anticipation for the next capsize, and you know, you just clearly don't want that to happen, you know, because I'd had some water ingress through a mistake of mine. I was meant to, a hatch has a vent in it for air. Now it's a very minimal amount of air, but it's something, and I thought I had locked that, but I hadn't. And what had happened during the capsize, the water had rushed in through it, so that's a big threat, you know, any water into the electrics. So then for the next whatever that was, 14 hours, you know, you're just sitting there waiting for this kind of thing to come, listening. You can hear the waves and they make different sounds, and you know the ones that are possible capsize, they kind of hiss like the wave has broken, and then it hisses along, and you're just lying there going, is this the one? And you're kind of, your arms shoot out when you hear that hissing, and your feet go to the sides, you know, and then it doesn't knock you over, and then, you know, you're waiting, is the next one coming?
So there's no water coming in there, you're just in there in an airtight bubble. Holding on, kind of waiting for that kind of capsize to come. That did thankfully never came, but that doesn't mean that the anticipation of it is, you know, you still have to live through that, which is the real drain, like, and the real kind of hard, you know, dark enough moments, like. So that like, I was genuinely kind of scared in that in those hours, just waiting. But after that, I didn't really have anything, you know, on that same level, thankfully. Does it right itself?
It does, yeah. Sorry, yeah. It goes either 180, depending on the power of the wave, it'll go 180 into the water and pop back up, or it'll go the full 360, which it did in those moments. And yeah, it's like being in a washing machine, basically.
That day 24 storm that you mentioned, and I think even on the podcast you said that it was the first time I was scared for the expedition. Found the wording of that fascinating. That I was scared for the expedition as opposed to scared for myself. Like, is there an element of that? It's the old Tom Wolfe Right Stuff book where he's talking about the fear of embarrassment and the fear of failure nearly being more than the fear of death. Like, was that the attitude you almost had in your head, that look, I need to achieve this regardless? So you're almost having a fear of not accomplishing it above all else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that comes back to that piece I was talking about, just being really attentive around all the kind of threats that are out there and trying to mitigate them. You know, that's where my concentration and focus goes, because, you know, I've put 3.5 years of work into it and made it, kind of realised it and got it going, and now it's time to actually kind of bring it to the other side of the ocean, basically, and that just, it doesn't happen from very little energy. It takes huge amounts of energy and focus. So like when you're out there, then that's all multiplied, right? You know, you're watching everything like a hawk, and the big threat and the big worry is failure, and not achieving what you want to achieve. So that's where my focus goes anyway, to where, you know, the things that can stop us. And on that day, water ingress, you know, frying all the electrics, that would mean game over. Like, I'd be safe, right? You know, still doesn't mean I wasn't scared, but, you know, if I'd just be rescued then after that, but the whole thing would go down the drain. And
like, there's the demoralising nature as well of some mornings, I'm sure, waking up and realising that you've gone backwards. I mean, you've been, you know, expending so much energy the day before, and then you wake up and you see, right, Jesus, how did I end up here? And you know it's, of course, because of the weather and the winds and whatever else, but how do you manage that? Because I can't imagine psychologically trying to deal with that when you're already physically in bits, but you're trying to then process, I've gone backwards overnight. So, like, it must be demoralising.
Oh, it's heartbreaking, crushing sometimes. Those first few strokes every morning as well. Even like, so right, it's happened, so I accept it. And I kind of became desensitised to actually going backwards, although it was always like, hit me, you know. It became less and less, but the first few strokes then in the day are absolutely vital. And like, I'm an optimist and I always have hope. I had a modicum of hope, at least. It was constantly chopped away and weaned down as I went, but it was still there. And you'd almost hold your breath for those first few strokes to see I'd be looking at the speed, and if it wasn't of the boat, you know, and if it wasn't over about 2 knots, I'd know I'm in for a really long, hard day. And probably every time I drop the oars, I'm going backwards, which is, I have to rest at some point, right? And that's hard to deal with. Again, you're thinking forward from the day, and you're like, oh man, here we go again. Like, today is, you know, a fight. It's going to be a fight to get this boat to move forward. And over time, that becomes really, really, really challenging. You know, it's just like, you've only got so much energy and there's so much kind of drive to kind of get back into that fight. And you just, after a while, you just want, I pray for an easy day. Just give me something from, you know, give me a bit of wind behind the boat. Just give me something. And I hit despair a few times. Like there was an absolute just, why is this so hard? Why can't I get any luck? I didn't have any luck with the weather. Like it was just just constantly. So first half took 44 days. The second half took 68 days to get across, and I all had headwinds because of that. Just no fortune really, unfortunately.
Where's the boat this morning?
She's in Athenry actually, in Gussie's yard.
Right. She deserves a bit of chilling out.
She does.
Put out the stud for a while.
A bit of TLC. She's pretty beaten up, but somehow she took that beating on the rocks in Furbo for whatever it was, 7 or 8 hours.
Serious beating, wasn't it? It
was.
It looks very damaged.
Yeah. Thankfully, just really amazing people were there to help. Like they've literally got out of bed at all hours of the morning, and as I was leaving Furbo with Mac Dara, who managed the project and just lives in Barna, which is only like a couple of miles down the road. So I rang him from the rocks.
You couldn't get any closer to his house.
Honestly, the first person that came into my mind. So I rang Chris, my land support, just to let him know the EPIRB was the electric. The beacon, the emergency beacon was off, and he needed to coordinate something. Then I rang Mac. I said, have you got a high-powered torch and a pair of trainers, and old trainers? Because my feet, I was barefoot at that point. The things I was wearing had ripped off in the rocks. So he, once I got checked over by the ambulance service, he drove me back to Renmore, my home place. And as we were leaving Furbo, Justin, the boat builder, who'd come over for the homecoming or the arrival, Chris, my land support, and Gussie, they were all staying together, they were staying at Gussie's house, were arriving in Furbo. Okay. And then as they were leaving, so they Justin wanted to see what was happening and seeing if he could protect the boat, and they did what they could. The Olivers, which is a local family in the Clada, who work they were actually on the Coast Guard rescue boat on the way out to me until they got got notified to come back. Right. Thankfully, because there was no need. But so they came out to Furbo and they brought a load of tyres and protected the boat, and then a load of locals the next morning helped as well. And
you feel that attachment with it. You want to protect it. You don't want to. You don't want to lose it. It's been so important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I must say, that night, the way it ended, I didn't have a great perspective on Everton, and I just thought failure. I thought it had ruined. I thought the boat was ruined. I thought I was pretty down now, I must admit. But it kind of, talking to some people and hearing their perspective kind of gave me much better. I can't see the woods from the trees, right? So,
can I ask you, because I was having a WhatsApp conversation with somebody that morning, and I was like, we were both following the pod and we were chatting away about it, and I was like, oh jeez, I can't believe it, he got so close. And my mate was like, what are you talking about? It's unbelievable. It's like he's done it, and it was. I'm sure that was maybe what was going on in your head to a degree. Yeah,
absolutely. I was definitely coming at it from your perspective, and Galway was 6 or 7 miles away, and washing up on the rocks, and I just couldn't get. I had this really clean image, I suppose, of the finish, and this almost romantic image. Even though you could argue the other way is a bit more romantic, And hearing people talk about it that way just gave me clarity, a bit more, of a kind of a better overview on what happened, and just was able to kind of come to terms with it a bit easier, much easier actually. Just hearing people talk about that, that was probably a better way to finish. I don't know, but
well, you'll never know.
No.
That's great, as you would say. That's fine. You live with that. Your the visualization was the thing that you kept talking about all the time, and maybe that was part of the attachment as well, even outside of the heroic nature of being able to do the thing of rowing in there. But that visualization that was almost, it felt at times like a magnet that was drawing you forward a lot, and then suddenly, it's a big accommodation then to have to say, well, it's not happening that way.
But it was so much. It gave me so much. Coming back to your point, Shane, about when I was at my lowest, there was some things I had to turn to, right, and those images that I had used for so long to make the project happen. And then in those moments became so important because, they're emotional, right? And emotion is energy, and I was able to kind of leverage that emotion and those imagery and get energy to kind of do what I needed to do every day, which was put in the work to get the boat to go away. So I was very attached to them, and they came up a lot for me. There was actually times where I think I was so bloody tired that I actually couldn't I couldn't access the depth of the imagery that I had from before, but that was just something that came up for me, but I was always leaning towards them, and I it was always a very helpful tool to have. And the other thing was just gratitude, like, just been grateful for the opportunity, and it was a privilege to do it, and been grateful for the small little things. I had a safe cabin. I was always trying to give myself a better perspective on what I was doing, because it's very easy to get sucked into the victim mentality. Oh my God, so hard. Why is it so hard? So I was always trying to get a better, broader view of what I was doing and how lucky I was to do it, and the little things I had on board. I have food. Some people don't have that, right? So that helped a lot as well in those moments of kind of despair.
It's funny, the word inspiration is kind of bandied around and thrown around so often that it almost becomes a little bit cliched. But you reference the people clambering for you when you get off the boat as well in Galway. But even like myself, I remember watching some of your old videos, climbing Aconcagua and Kilimanjaro, and I have to say myself and a couple of my mates probably only climbed. We did Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago. Probably only did it based on your videos.
Right.
Visited the Amani Children's Home as well, which I know you raised money for.
Yeah.
Probably only because we heard of it through yourself.
Yeah.
But like, is that something you're now aware of? Are you more appreciative or aware of the inspiration that you might have on other people? I know the social media aspect probably gives you a fair idea, but there's a real tangible impact you're having on other people, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I find it hard to access it, I must say. Like, I love, the words are lovely and people say really nice things, but and I don't know if this is the right thing, but I let it go, I don't get caught up in it too much, or say, for example, when I make a podcast or do one of those videos, I never think about it again. I never go back and watch. I just try and be as authentic as possible and kind of give people an insight into the story, because I find that, clearly I like challenge, and I think it's a really, for me anyway, it's an important thing to bring into my life, and it gives me a lot. So that's the thing that's the message, I'm trying to, I suppose, convey, on a broad scale, is to find something you love in life and challenge yourself through it, and it'll give you lots. So once I feel I've kind of hit those notes, I'm pretty happy with it, and anything else that comes from it, great. But yeah, in terms of kind of, I do struggle to connect with that whole inspiration thing. I just try and be authentic, and if I am, that's enough for me. And if people get something from that, fantastic.
I definitely felt, listening to you this morning and listening to the podcast, that it was just all a metaphor for something. Obviously, I'm doing it as I'm going about my day. I'm listening to what's going on, and you're having a very different experience of that. But I certainly felt as if all the different challenges were a metaphor for something else. And again, kind of listening to you, maybe the same thing kind of this morning. What's the plan for Cushla then? Will you leave her be for a while anyway? But
yeah, we'll get her fixed up. Back to Justin, who built her. It's a testament to his build. And again, something I was conscious of with the end in mind here is to you get people involved in your team who are passionate about what they do and love what they do, and he just absolutely loves building boats, and he does it to the highest quality, puts his heart and soul into it. So get it back to him, he'll fix her up, and then we Project Empower was the name of the project, and we want to use what we've kind of built. I think it's got a good following, and it's a platform now for people to row an ocean, and kind of what you alluded to there. I feel rowing an ocean is like a condensed life of challenges, so if you have that experience, it gives you a lot to deal with the everyday stuff that comes up when you're back in land, so I feel it's a great thing to do. I think everyone should row an ocean, else it's not going to happen. But
easy, yeah.
It gives you great perspective on life. It's humbling, and you get to know yourself a little bit better. So we're going to use that platform to try and get other people, or give them the experience, anyone who's interested in doing it. So
Is Everest, I know the whole Everest expedition, COVID got in the way the last time. Is that a case of unfinished business in your head, or what's the I know the 7 summits in particular is something you're mad keen to finish. So where is Everest in your head at the minute?
I want to achieve it. I want to stand on top of the world. I want to challenge myself through it. I find mountaineering it's a total different beast to ocean rowing. It's because there's extreme physical and mental peaks in mountaineering because of the lack of oxygen, so you go into those states of hyperventilation, whereas ocean rowing is just this relentless beast. So I want to challenge myself, and trying to get to the highest point in the world. And kind of timeline, I'm not pushed with it right now. I'm thinking 2, 3, 4 years. Whenever I kind of raise or refine the emotional energy to start a new campaign, the training and obviously the fundraising and all that. You need that. You can't go into it half kind of hearted or half full of energy. So it's probably the next thing again, get back there and give it a good go. But for now, I'm not pushed on timelines with it.
Yeah, well, we're not going to push you on it this morning either. Thanks a million for coming in. I'm sure there's loads of stuff there's a million different things that we never got to and that we're never going to get to, but I'm sure there'll be something else. The documentary's coming out.
Documentary.
There might be a book down the track.
Hoping to write a book. I'm starting pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we look forward to all that. It's been brilliant catching up with you. I'm sure you've loads of people to catch up with, loads of world events that have happened. I'm sure over the last while as well that you're like, oh. Did that? Oh, she's dead. Okay.
And foods to catch up on. You think
more than just Supermax. Is that it?
Exactly.
Brilliant, Damien. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
You can check out, as Damien said, his Project Empower. If you want to check out his social handles, you get all the details on that, how you can get involved. You can donate to the chosen charities and keep an eye out for that documentary upcoming as well. And Deep Roots podcast, brilliant listen and plenty in it if you want to go back, even if you haven't caught it in real time. That is pretty much it from us for this morning. It's 9:45. We've really enjoyed the last couple of hours, brought to you live each morning, of course, by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Back on Monday morning, it'll be Jared Nathan in studio. Nathan will be kicking off proceedings with, and no doubt, a perfect rendition of his Gillette Labs performance rankings. Need to be very careful around that stuff at the minute. It's a bumper show all the way from there. It'll be Mike Carlson, Laurie Whitehall as well. Alan Quinlan will be back. Paul Galvin will be along as well to talk GA, and he'll be live in studio. So plenty of reasons to stay tuned for Monday morning. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with our own Aisling O'Reilly. She's been chatting with another sporting icon, another former Ireland second row, Paul O'Connell. Enjoy and have a great weekend. Good luck.
Paul O'Connell, delighted to be here at Limerick's International Rugby Experience. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, the International Rugby Experience is a project that's been in the making for quite some time now. It's a very exciting project, but it's been challenging because we've been constructing it during COVID, so it's been tough in that regard. But it's a tourist destination in the middle of the city centre, and I suppose it has rugby at its heart, which is a big part of Limerick's story, with Thomond Park, Munster Rugby, the club game, the internationals that have come here, the internationals that have come from here, the international teams that have played here and lost here down through the years. So it tells the story of rugby, not through, I suppose, the history of the game. It tells it through the 5 values of world rugby, and it tells it through the journey of a player from grassroots to legendary status as well. So Neil McLaughlin designed the building here, and James Alexander and Event Communications now have designed the interior of the building. So we're at the point now where the building is kind of finished. It's kind of safe to show people around the building, and the installation of the actual experience is about to start happening now over the next number of weeks. So it's a day when we get to show some of the people from tourism and from the city around, so that they can, I suppose, understand what the project is about, because we've been telling people it's not a museum, it's an experience, and people are trying to get their head around that. So it's an exciting day, and it's the start. Even though it isn't the start for us, it's a bit of the start of the building beginning to open up a little bit.
And it's quite a journey I'm sure you've been on, especially if you're going through it during COVID as well. And it's 6 stories high, and it's quite immersive as well, so people can come here and get involved in it.
Yeah, it's very interactive. There's everything from, you can engage in the little stories of the game, and there's a skills floor as well where there's a kicking interactive where Johnny Wilkinson will take you through how to kick a rugby ball the right way and the different types of kicks, and you can measure the speed, the height, the spin on your kick, all that kind of stuff. There's the same for footwork. There's something similar for passing. So there's a refereeing interactive where Nigel Owens will introduce it and take you through a few tricky decisions and things like that. So it's there's something here for young kids. There's something here for avid fans, for future fans, for families. There's something here for everyone.
And it's male and female legends of the game?
Absolutely, yeah, of course it is. And that's been one of the most enjoyable things of the project is you know, we've been picking up the phone to players since 2017. You know, some players we would have been picking up the phone to asking them to be involved. We wouldn't have even known what we were asking them. But when you mention Limerick and you mention rugby and you mention the people that are involved in the project, players haven't hesitated to agree to be involved, and all on a voluntary basis. So that's been brilliant for us.
And JP McManus is involved as well?
Yeah, well, it's his idea. It's his idea from the start. I mean, it's not like someone came up with the idea and asked him to fund it. It's his idea, and obviously he's funding it. You know, this spectacular building in the middle of the city centre that we can all be so proud of. You know, I suppose the initial idea from Neil McLaughlin, the architect, was that it was a cathedral of rugby. You know, we've these spires that kind of stick up throughout the city, and this is another building that kind of raises its head above the parapet, and it's a cathedral to rugby. So yeah, it's been amazing to be involved in something that's been done so well, with such great intentions at its heart, and the city has to be thankful to JP McManus and his family for doing it.
Amazing. We look forward to it opening. I know you said it's probably the new year. No exact date yet, but we're waiting for the new year.
Yeah, the new year probably. Yeah, you know, there'll probably be a few groups in testing the place out before that, but probably the new year.
Amazing. And how's life for you besides all of this? I'm sure it's very hectic. 3 kids as well.
Yeah, it is very hectic. We're just back from Bloemfontein. We were there with Emerging Ireland, so I was there for the last 2.5 weeks with some young Irish rugby players. It was a brilliant experience for us. You know, I suppose Bloemfontein, it was beautiful. We stayed in a great hotel. We could walk straight across the road to the famous Grey College, which has produced some of the, I think as a school has produced more Springboks than any other school in South Africa. Amazing facilities. We 3 great games where we found out a lot about the players, and we were able to, I suppose, sharpen our skills as coaches as well. So it was a great experience. And Sunday week we head into camp then for the Autumn Internationals. We haven't played South Africa since 2017, I think. A week later we play Fiji, who are a very strong side now, who have an excellent coaching staff, and Australia, who had a tough rugby championship, but have some real talent and excellent coaching staff as well. So we head into a big 3 weeks now with Ireland.
And I know the Emerging Ireland tour, it was set up to maybe see some talent that you hadn't always seen at that elite level. Have you got that out of it?
Yeah, well, I suppose we always see them, but we don't know them. You know, we watch them playing intermittently, but we don't get to know. We don't get to know the person, and we don't get to know, I suppose, their struggles in terms of trying to break through and trying to get selected in the provinces. So, from that point of view, for us to, I suppose, to sharpen our skills, because international rugby, you don't have a pre-season in international rugby to bed in what you're going to do. Very often you come together and you're playing an international match 12 days later. So there's a real skill in trying to get a team ready to play. And this time we had 7 days to get ready to play, and we had to travel to South Africa via Dubai into Johannesburg, stay the night and fly down to Bloemfontein. So there was a real challenge in getting ready as quickly. So you have to have real clarity in what you're doing. So for us as a coaching staff, that was brilliant. And then brilliant to see some of the young players, you know, guys that certainly would have been, I suppose, on our radar, and we were excited for them to come through, but we're probably more excited about some of them now, and that's only good for Irish rugby.
And watching on, there was some impressive players, as you said. Tom Ahern was someone that I thought stood out.
Yeah, I suppose we had 3 games, so some guys were obviously going to get more game time than others, you know. So if you started that first game, you had a good chance, because there was only 4 days between the second game and the third game. You had a good chance of starting the third game. Luckily for us, a lot of the guys stayed injury free, and Tom Ahern was one that did really well. I mean, I think we conceded 18 penalties. I think it was actually more. I think the official number is 18 penalties in the last game, which meant we were defending a load of lineouts. And luckily for us, you know, it's a skill set that he's very good at. He's very good at kick-off receive. He's a very powerful ball carrier. So he had a great tour. But all the second rows, I was a second row myself, so I'm probably watching all the second rows more than anyone else, but all our second rows did really well on the tour. Brian Deeney, Joe McCarthy, Cormac Izachuku. They're a different type of athlete to what we had when I was playing. They're big men, but they're fast, they're powerful, they're athletic, they move really well. So to see that calibre of second row coming through on the tour was brilliant.
And I suppose for the clubs to see their players going away playing, it wasn't the ideal scenario for them. But the likes, I suppose, of Jack Rowley, he probably got more time than he would have if he probably stayed here with Munster.
Yeah, I suppose it's a challenge all the time, isn't it, for playing time for teams, and they the other challenge is they need players at home for training to allow them to prepare for games at the weekend. It's hard. So we understood the challenges, sure, but we felt there was a bit of a trade-off there that would be good, and for us to talk to some of these players, coach some of them, play a game, review it, try and fix something for the following day and see for the following game and see how they react to that. There was real value in that for us to see how they handled that. There was real value in that for us to be able to try some things as well. And I hope in time, people appreciate the trade-off. There was a risk in it for sure. Provinces, I think, I would say, weren't happy to lose some players, were happy for other players to be getting game time, because that's a challenge for everyone. So hopefully the trade-off works out in the end.
Great. And how much are you enjoying your coaching role with Ireland at the moment?
Yeah, I love it. It's busy. It's there's so much to be done. You could be watching footage all night. It's trying to figure out what's really important and focusing on that. And I think the more you coach, the better you get at that. I know that, Andy Simon Easterby in particular would be really good at figuring out what's important and focusing on that. And but for me, it's been great. It's been great to be involved with a mixture of coaches who all look at the game differently, all can collaborate quite well. We can argue. I suppose we trust each other enough to be able to argue and try and get to the right answer rather than it be an argument. So I really enjoy it. Really enjoy it. It gives you a bit of balance, I think, as well. International rugby, in that when you're in it and you have games, you're full on, you're away from home. But when you're home, you do have a bit of time. If you can plan your time properly, you can still bring the kids to school, you can still collect them a few days, you can bring them to a match at the weekend or that kind of thing, and double it up that way. So when you have a young family, it's good. It's tough when you're in the club game, I know that. You have a game every week, you have a game to review every week. So the club game can be a bit tougher, but people figure it out. But I must say I really enjoy the international game.
And was that always the ambition, that when you retired as a player that you'd go on to be a coach?
I don't think it was always the ambition, certainly a good few years before I retired. And then as I was coming to retirement, I was watching the workload of some of the coaches at the time, and I wasn't so sure if it was for me. And I was lucky then that Munster were quite supportive to me in that they gave me an academy role where I wasn't full time. The RFU were very supportive to me in that I coached the under-20s for a period and got to work with some great coaches there. I travelled abroad for a year with Paris, so I got quite a good bit of experience. And I suppose when the international role came along, having known Andy and Simon Easterby and John Fogarty previously, I knew there would be guys that I could work with and enjoy working with, and it was a fantastic opportunity and one which I'm really enjoying.
And I don't know if you've seen it yet, the documentary with Brian O'Driscoll after the Roar. It's just really impressive to see, I suppose, insight into what it's like to retire from an elite sport, and I suppose the struggles and the challenges with that. For you, how was it when you retired?
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard, and I think one of those things, I know Tommy Bowe did a documentary as well before, and Brian's documentary is excellent. And I think one of the things it does for players that are retiring, it makes them realise this is going to be hard, I think sometimes you might look at social media and think a lot of guys have it sorted, but very few have. I think every single player struggles when he finishes, because it's such a big change. It's such a big change in lifestyle. And it's such a big change in terms of figuring out what you're going to do next and what you're going to be passionate about and where you're going to put your time. So I think that's the first step, if you can actually admit this is going to be hard, and if you're happy that you can see that other people find it hard as well, because I certainly did, and I still continue to find it hard. I still miss playing terribly, but I think the more, like anything with mental health, the more you see people having the same struggles as you might have, and the more you see people talking openly about it, the more other people are encouraged to talk openly about it and get help. So I think it's a brilliant documentary, and I think it's good for future players who are retiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really normalised that, that is absolutely normal. Even if you're at the highest point in your life and playing at elite level, it's normal to feel like that.
Yeah, and some people feel that, some players finish with better opportunities than others, but the struggle doesn't really have anything to do with that. I think, you got to figure out what you're going to do in your head. You got to figure out that it'll be tough for a few years while you're figuring out. You got to realize you don't have to have all the answers as well. But it's well worth considering and discussing it and getting a bit of help before you do make the decision to retire, or as is very often the case now, that the decision to retire is forced upon you.
Yes, absolutely. And Munster at the moment, they've lost 3 out of the 4 games so far this season. Not the ideal start, and new coaching team in there as well, so it's not been easy for them.
No, it's not been easy for them, but I'd coffee with one of the Blue Bulls fitness coaches there in Limerick at the moment, and I worked with one of them, Steph Francais. I'd coffee with one of them yesterday. They lost I think 6 out of their first 7 last year and ended up in the final. And they learned lessons. They really struggled at the start of the year against the Irish teams. They realised they had to change what they were doing, and they were very adaptable. So Munster have made big changes to their coaching staff. They've made big changes to how they want to do things, and they just need to remain calm and hang in there, and it come right. They've very, very good people involved in the coaching setup. I know that Andy, Simon, and Catty and John Fogarty struggled when they first took over from Joe Schmidt after the World Cup, and I think if you know what you stand for and you've clarity in terms of how you want to play, it takes time to bed in, but if you do have that clarity and know what you stand for, it'll come right in the end, and be confident that will happen with Munster as well.
Yes, as you said, big game against Bulls this weekend, so they're back in Thomond Park, first time in nearly 6 months.
Yeah, it's exciting for them, exciting for the coaching staff as well, the likes of Mike Prendergast, who's been away for so long, the likes of Dennis Leamy, who's been retired and been away coaching as well. So I'd say a lot of them are very excited for the game at the weekend, and sometimes you just need a few little things to go your way, get a result, and a few of the things that you're trying to make part of your game, a few of those things to work so that people can go, yeah, okay, this works, let's stick with it. So hopefully that happens for them at the weekend.
And lastly then, just to chat about Johnny Sexton. He's still doing it for Leinster, still doing it for Ireland. What is it about Johnny Sexton?
I think all the players, the more you play the game, the more you see the pictures, and you become instinctive in what the right decisions to make are. So he's obviously played at a high level for a long time, but he's trained at a massively high level as well for a long time. So I think he sees the pictures very quickly and is able to make decisions based on his experience, and that's the challenge really for every out half. They touch the ball second most in the team after the number 9. They're the guys that have to make the decisions, and the more times they've been put in that position to make decisions and they've made them wrong and they've reviewed it and figured out why it was wrong, the better chance they have of it being instinctive. And I think that's where he is at the moment. The way Leinster play and the way we play suits him. Mm-hmm. He's very comfortable with it, he understands it, he's figured it out, and because of that, he looks very calm when he plays, very in control when he plays, and it's a joy to watch. It's just, it's great seeing him competing as well. I mean, that's what the funny thing about him is winning doesn't take the edge off. I think it makes it worse, which is a great thing for any team he plays on.
Absolutely, Paul. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.